Chapter 293. The White Fox tribe gave him 5 sets of materials and only asked for a crane feather boat. Naturally, the reward was not high, only 3,000 spirit stones. An upper-grade level, 2 magic weapon with special functions was worth more than 10,000 spirit stones. The 2 level, 2 blacksmiths spent more than a month and only earned 3,000 spirit stones. It was a big loss. However, the refining method of the crane feather boat and the tool pattern to assist in flight were not something that could be measured with a few thousand spirit stones. He was not in a hurry to refine the remaining 2 sets of materials. The current crane feather boat had too many flaws and it would not be interesting to refine it. It was better to refine it after some improvement. Furthermore, he promised the White Fox tribe to keep it a secret. If he used the crane feather boat outside, he would offend them. Although the White Fox tribe was not a powerful force, it would be easy for them to deal with him. After refining the crane feather boat, the next step was to refine the jasper hairpin. The main material of the jasper hairpin was not rare. Jasper was a common upper-grade level, 2 jade material. Its strength was not low, but it was not high either. The other party had more requirements for the functions of the jasper hairpin, but the refining method was already given in the jade slip, so there was no need for him to think about it. The tool pattern was a very basic type. The only valuable thing was the way to deal with the conflict between the tool patterns. With the way to deal with the conflict between the tool patterns, he would be able to give the tool many functions in the future. He spent half a month and only failed once. On his second try, he successfully refined a upper-grade level, 2 jasper hairpin. He was given 5 sets of materials and the remaining 3 sets were for him. The reward was 2,000 spirit stones. The shield was the least technical. It was just a hard material. After refining the metal material and forging it into shape, all he had to do was to inscribe the defensive array pattern. He was given 3 sets of materials, but Wang Daoyuan succeeded on his first try. He only took 3 days to complete the refinement. The reward was 1,000 spirit stones, which was a big profit. The long sword was called the Autumn Water Sword. It was a water-attributed magic weapon and there was nothing special about the tool pattern. However, water-attributed longswords generally did not have much lethality. Water-attributed and wood-attributed cultivators would not use flying swords as their main magic weapon. This autumn water sword was a fancy job in terms of materials. It completely smelted water-attributed materials, extracted their essence, and smelted them into relatively strong non-attributed metal materials, forging a metal longsword with water-attributed spiritual energy as the main element. Although the lethality of the autumn water sword forged in this way was much weaker than that of a gold fire attribute flying sword, it was much stronger than ordinary water attribute magic tools. This kind of refining method of destroying the main material, extracting its essence, and then injecting it into other materials required a high level of purification of the material. It was often used to refine magic tools of the water and wood attribute. This kind of refining was not considered rare, but Wang Daoyuan's 2 Tier 3 legacy sets did not have it. Refining the autumn water sword could be considered as making up for one of his shortcomings in refining tools. It wasn't too difficult to refine. He used 5 or 6 days and failed once to refine the autumn water sword. There were a total of 3 sets of materials, and he only had 1 set left. The reward was 1,000 spirit stones. The 4 magical tools were all completed in 2.5 months. The reward was 9,000 spirit stones. He did not earn many spirit stones, but the materials and refining methods were very valuable. Wang Daoyuan informed Beiyuan through Fu Cheng to come and collect the magical tools. A day later, Beiyuan came to the workshop with 2 half-demon women who were even prettier than the previous one. Wang Daoyuan handed the 4 magical tools to her. She took them, checked them, and put them in her storage bag. Beiyuan smiled. I didn't expect Wu Daoyu to be so fast in refining weapons. In just 2 months, you've refined 4 magical tools. This is the reward I promised Dao Yu. With that, she handed a storage bag to Wang Daoyuan. He took the storage bag and put it away without even looking at it. He smiled. This time, I was able to refine 4 magical tools so quickly because of my friend's help. She had brought 2 half-demon beauties with her because she wanted Bai Sheng. There were definitely people from the White Fox tribe watching the shop. Bai Sheng could not hide from her in the Wu clan's workshop. However, Bai Ying was good at acting. After hearing Wang Daoyuan's words, her eyes lit up and she quickly asked, "Is Wu Daoyu's friend here? Can I meet him?" Bai Sheng walked out of the workshop. Bai Ying immediately went up to him and asked enthusiastically, "May I know Daoyu's name? Do you have a Dao companion?" Bai Sheng smiled. "I'm Bai Sheng. Greetings, Dao Yu. I'm focused on cultivation and have no intention of getting married." Bai Ying looked disappointed. "That's a pity. My name is Bai Ying. I have the same surname as Dao Yu. We're family." Wang Daoyuan was speechless. Bai Sheng's surname was Bai. The White Fox tribe's surname was Bai because their ancestors were white foxes. Half-demons had the surname Chui. Bai Ying did not give up and continued to attack Bai Sheng. After a long time, Bai Sheng was still unmoved. Bai Ying had no choice but to give up and leave the shop with the 2 half-demon women. Bai Sheng continued to reforge the 7 long swords that he had obtained from killing people. His refining skills were very close to second-tier superior grade. He needed more practice. Wang Daoyuan himself was studying the crane feather boat, trying to improve its refining method. 3 days later, Bai Ying came again. She walked straight into the shop and saw Wang Daoyuan. She smiled. "Wu Daoyu, I'm here to disturb you again." Wang Daoyuan smiled. "I'm very grateful that Miss Bai is here to take care of my business. There's no need to disturb me." Bai Ying handed a storage bag to Wang Daoyuan and said solemnly, "This is no small matter. Dao Yu, please don't tell anyone about it." Wang Daoyuan nodded. "Don't worry, Miss Bai. I know the rules. Since I've promised to keep it a secret, I won't tell anyone." After Bai Ying left, Wang Daoyuan opened his storage pouch. Inside, there were 2 gourds, some high-grade tier 2 materials, and a jade slip. Wang Daoyuan took out the jade slip and kept it in the space of the spiritual pearl. He handed it to his clone to check. There was nothing left in the jade slip. The jade slip recorded the refining method of a gourd magic weapon. This magic weapon was called the Demon Subduing Gourd. Using divine sense and spiritual power to activate the gourd, one could subdue demonic beasts. This magic weapon was not strange. If it was south of Mount Huiyan, it would be normal for someone to use this gourd. But this was the north of the mountain, the territory of the demon race. Whoever dared to use this magic weapon would be hunted to death by the demon race. Could it be that the White Fox tribe wanted to cause trouble? The territory of the White Fox tribe was about 10,000 miles northeast of Clear Glass City. It was not far from the periphery of the sky/mountain range. Although the half-demons were neutral, they did not allow outsiders to enter their territory. Therefore, the outside world did not know much about the situation of the White Fox tribe. Maybe the White Fox tribe was threatened by demonic beasts, or maybe they had the same idea as the Wang family and wanted to explore the periphery of the sky/mountain range. This matter had nothing to do with him. The White Fox tribe was more than 5,000 miles north of Mount Huiyan. The Wang family did not intend to go beyond Mount Huiyan and expand to the north of the mountain. No matter how much trouble the White Fox tribe caused, it would not affect the Wang family. He only wanted to do business. Why should he care about the White Fox tribe? However, these 2 gourds were a pleasant surprise. To refine a weapon, he needed to take out the gourd seeds. Now, he could add a new type of spiritual plant to the space of the spiritual pearl. Moreover, the weapon pattern and technique required to refine the demon-subduing gourd were all things that Wang Daoyuan did not know. He was willing to do such a good thing for free. Moreover, there was a reward of 5,000 spirit stones. Chapter 294. These two gourds were the mystic essence gourd. The grade of the gourd vine would increase with age and could reach middle grade, grade 3 at the highest. Gourds could be refined into many types of dermic weapons, especially an attributeless gourd like the mystic essence gourd. The most common type was to nurture flying swords, flying daggers, and other dermic weapons in the gourd to increase the power of the dermic weapon. There were also gourds that could contain water, fire, poison, fog, and other things. The blazing gourd on Mount Jade Pine had a flame transformation tool pattern inscribed on it and was a common gourd dermic weapon. Any gourd could be used to refine spatial treasures. These two mystic essence gourds were both superior grade, grade 2, and spatial treasures refined directly could only be low-grade spatial treasures on the same level as storage bags. If he could hire a grade 3 weapon refinement master, he could use the smelting technique to refine the autumn water sword. By refining the essence of grade 3 materials and fusing them into the gourd, he could refine a high-grade spatial treasure. Unfortunately, Wang Daoyuan was only a superior grade, grade 2 weapon refinement master. From grade 2 to grade 3, elixir, weapon, and talisman arrays were a huge hurdle and it was difficult to cross it. Grade 3 materials were hard to find, and without sufficient materials to practice, it would be even harder to cross this hurdle. Given his skill in weapon refinement, he could only refine superior grade, grade 2 dermic weapons. A superior grade, grade 2 demon subduing gourd would have no problem dealing with grade 2 demonic beasts. The method to refine the demon subduing gourd and the tool pattern on it were clearly recorded in the jade slip. There were 3 types of tool patterns. The first was to suppress the soul. To subdue a demonic beast, one had to first weaken its resistance. A demonic beast's body was strong but its soul was weak. Attacking its soul was the best way to subdue it. The second type was the spatial tool pattern. It was similar to the tool patterns on storage bags and universe rings. After all, the gourd was only so big. To contain a demonic beast, one had to expand the internal space. The spatial tool pattern on the demon subduing gourd had another special feature. It had to have an extremely strong collecting ability. After all, subduing a demonic beast was not as simple as putting things in storage bags. Even if its soul was suppressed, it would still have some resistance. To store it into the space, one had to have a strong suction force. The third type was to strengthen the tool pattern to increase the strength of the gourd. Demonic beasts that were sucked into the gourd would surely struggle. Since the gourd itself wasn't strong enough, it was only natural that it had to be strengthened through smithing. The gourd was about a foot long, and it wasn't difficult to inscribe 3 types of tool inscriptions on it. Beiyuan's storage pouch contained 2 gourds and a few jade slips, as well as a few superior grade 2 materials. According to the forging method recorded in the jade slip, the essence of these forging materials was to be extracted and fused into the gourd to increase its strength. The spiritual power contained in these 2 gourds was of no attribute, which made them suitable for refining with the essence of other refining materials. The smelting method was not difficult, and Beiyuan could do it. To refine a magic tool with a gourd, one had to first clean out the gourd pulp and gourd seeds. Ranked spirit plants and spirit beasts would have a much lower reproductive ability. There were only a dozen gourd seeds in the 2 gourds. Wang Daoyuan stored the gourd seeds in the spiritual bead and planted them near the spiritual fire of life. After Beiyuan fused the essence of several refining materials into the gourd, Wang Daoyuan personally inscribed the tool pattern on the gourd. After the first gourd was refined, there were some serious mistakes when inscribing the tool pattern. He tried his best to salvage it, so it wasn't completely destroyed, but its grade dropped to intermediate grade 2. A intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd could be used to subdue intermediate grade 2 demonic beasts, and it was considered a powerful grade 2 magic tool. A intermediate grade 2 magic tool couldn't be handed over, but it could be sold outside for 4,000 to 5,000 spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan adjusted his state and began the second refinement. With the experience from the first refinement, he didn't make any major mistakes in the second refinement. He used 7 days to refine an advanced grade 2 demon subduing gourd. It only took him 20 days to refine 2 magic tools. Although there were no more materials left, the reward of 5,000 spirit stones was not bad. Moreover, he could sell the intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd to Beiyuan at the market price for a total of 10,000 spirit stones. He had to admit that he had a certain level of proficiency in alchemy, smithing, and talisman. Earning spirit stones was a piece of cake for him. However, his current situation was special. He was being paid to refine magic tools for the White Fox tribe. He didn't have to consider the source of materials or the sales channel of the magic tools. Most advanced grade 2 weapon refinement masters didn't have such treatment. It was difficult to gather materials for a magic tool in a few months if he relied on purchasing materials himself. Even if he refined a magic tool, it would take some time before he could sell it. After refining the demon subduing gourd, Wang Daoyuan went to greet Beiyuan through Fu Cheng. This time, Beiyuan was faster. She arrived in a hurry after half a day. She didn't bring the half-demon beauty with her this time. She came alone. After entering the shop, Wang Daoyuan closed the door and activated the defense array. Seeing how serious he was, Beiyuan teased, "Wu Daoyu, aren't you afraid of being misunderstood by others?" Wang Daoyuan smiled. "Miss Bai, if you want others to know that the White Fox tribe is looking for me to refine the demon subduing gourd, I can also close the array formation and the door of the shop." Beiyuan couldn't laugh immediately and cupped her fists. "Wu Daoyu, please don't take offense. I was just joking. Have you refined the magic tool?" Wang Daoyuan took out an advanced grade 2 demon subduing gourd from the weapon refinement room and handed it to Beiyuan. Beiyuan took the gourd and observed it carefully. Daoyu's weapon refinement technique is getting better. There are no obvious flaws on this demon subduing gourd. This is the reward Daoyu deserves. With that said, she handed a storage bag to Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan took the storage bag and hung it on his waist. He asked, "There were some mistakes with the other gourd. In the end, I only managed to refine an intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd. I don't dare to use such a magic tool in the northern mountains. Do you want it, Miss Bai?" Beiyuan replied without hesitation, "Of course I want it. I can buy it according to the market price. However, I'll have to check the quality of the item first." Before she finished her sentence, she took out the intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd. Beiyuan snatched the demon subduing gourd and observed it carefully. She even injected spirit energy into it to activate it. Since the item had yet to acknowledge an owner, it wouldn't have much of an effect. However, she could tell the grade of the entire magic tool with just a trace of spirit energy fluctuation. Eventually, Beiyuan nodded. "Daoyu is truly capable. To think that you could make up for a major mistake in the inscription of the tool pattern to such an extent. Although this magic tool is of intermediate grade 2, it's made of advanced grade 2 materials. In actual fact, it's stronger than ordinary intermediate grade 2 magic tools. Our White Fox tribe wants to work with Daoyu for a long time, so we naturally won't let Daoyu suffer a loss. This intermediate grade 2 demon subduing gourd will be priced at 6,000 spirit stones. What do you think, Daoyu?" That was a very generous price and Wang Daoyuan naturally had no objections. Beiyuan took out 60 middle-grade spirit stones from a storage bag and handed them to Wang Daoyuan. Both gourds were spatial magic tools and couldn't be kept in storage bags. It would be too ostentatious to take them out in the open. She put the 2 gourds into a box and left the Wu clan's weapon workshop with it. Chapter 295. In the following days, Beiyuan did not look for Wang Daoyuan to refine weapons. He did not idle around and trained Beisheng every day. Because the clone's soul had been severely injured, its original consciousness was erased and the soul had taken over. After all, the soul was not the same as the clone's original soul. No matter how brilliant the secret art was, it could not allow them to merge perfectly. The clone was weaker in anything related to the soul, especially in terms of comprehension. Alchemy, smithing, and talisman arrays required a high level of comprehension. Beisheng's soul was problematic and his comprehension was poor. That was why he could not make a breakthrough in smithing. Wang Daoyuan gave him dozens of black jade lotus seeds, but there was no change. If his comprehension was not good, then he could use numbers to make up for it. Beisheng's biggest shortcoming now was inscribing weapon patterns. Wang Daoyuan continued to forge weapon embryos and gave them to Beisheng to inscribe. Of course, these weapon embryos were made of metal. Even if the inscription failed, they could be reforged and there would not be too much loss. Through Fu Cheng's connections, Wang Daoyuan contacted a few shops that provided spirit charcoal and smithing materials. There were many second-grade smithing materials in the smithing workshop. After 3 months of high-intensity training, Beisheng's success rate of inscribing weapon patterns finally reached 40%. His standard of refining materials and forging had long reached the standard of an upper-grade rank 2 smithing master. Now that he had made up for his shortcoming of inscribing weapon patterns, he naturally became a true upper-grade rank 2 smithing master. Beisheng's smithing skills were good enough, so Wang Daoyuan did not need to keep an eye on him. He could focus on Wu Yi's clone. Wu Yi was now the steward and knew more about Blood Shadow. He knew that yin-yang purple jade could not be exchanged with spirit stones. Apart from spirit stones, one also needed the corresponding contribution points. Spirit stones were not a problem. Wang Daoyuan opened a smithing workshop and secretly sold some elixirs and talismans. It was not a problem for him to earn hundreds of thousands of spirit stones a year. Even if he bought 2 pieces of yin-yang purple jade, it would take him more than 10 years to earn enough spirit stones. However, it was difficult to obtain contribution points. According to Blood Shadow's rules, there was a set of rules for obtaining contribution points. One could not directly use spirit stones to exchange for contribution points. Blood Shadow was an external affairs cultivator. Half of the bounty obtained from killing a bounty target belonged to Blood Shadow, while the other half belonged to the cultivator himself. The number of spirit stones one handed over was the number of contribution points one would receive. Wu Yi had worked hard for decades, but he only had around 100,000 contribution points. The cultivators of the branch needed 700,000 spirit stones and 350,000 contribution points to exchange for the yin-yang purple jade or the purple cloudwood core. In other words, he had to complete the mission and obtain a reward of 700,000 spiritual stones in order to obtain 350,000 contribution points. Apart from that, the Hall Master's approval was required to exchange for the yin-yang purple jade. As a trusted aide that Crimson Fox had nurtured, it wasn't a problem for Wu Yi's clone to obtain the Hall Master's acknowledgement. However, it was too difficult to obtain 350,000 contribution points, which was equivalent to 700,000 contribution points. If he personally went out to do bounty missions, it would take him at least 20 to 30 years to gather enough contribution points. Other than that, there was another shortcut. This shortcut could only be taken by a steward. After the external affairs cultivators under the steward completed a bounty mission, the steward would receive a 5% commission from the contribution points obtained. It didn't mean much to have few cultivators under one's command. However, if there were many cultivators under one's command, the total number would be considerable. Apart from that, every time a cultivator was recruited into Blood Shadow, the steward would also receive a certain amount of contribution points. Recruiting qi refinement cultivators would give him 100 to 500 contribution points. Recruiting foundation establishment cultivators would give him 2,000 to 5,000 contribution points. Therefore, if he wanted to obtain the yin-yang purple jade as soon as possible, he had to do his best to be a steward. Only by recruiting more subordinates could he obtain contribution points faster. Wang Daoyuan was speechless. He had made his clone Wu Yi go undercover in order to obtain the yin-yang purple jade from Blood Shadow. Initially, he was going to take advantage of the situation. However, not only did he not take advantage of the situation, he even recruited cultivators to strengthen Blood Shadow. It was truly touching for him to be a spy to this extent. Blood Shadow could not recruit people openly like ordinary factions. They had to hide their secrets. As such, the difficulty was very high. If he wanted to recruit people without revealing Blood Shadow's secrets, he had to ensure that the people Wu Yi recruited were either willing to join Blood Shadow or die. Killing people would cause a huge commotion, so he had to ensure the success rate of roping them in. This required a deep understanding of itinerant cultivators to know which ones were willing to join Blood Shadow. There was one person who could be used to determine whether a disbanded cultivator was willing to join Blood Shadow, and that was Fu Cheng. This kid had grown up in Guiyan Market. Ever since he embarked on the path of cultivation, he had been dealing with itinerant cultivators and knew them very well. He could quickly determine which cultivators were willing to join Blood Shadow. Most of the brokers in Guiyan Market did not have any backing. They only had two sources of income. One was to maintain a cooperative relationship with various shops to attract business for them and receive some commission. The other was to run errands for cultivators who came to Guiyan Market for the first time. These cultivators could more or less give them some remuneration. These two businesses were not easy to do. It was fine when the situation was stable. However, once the situation was unstable and itinerant cultivators did not dare to enter the market easily, these brokers could only starve. Therefore, the success rate of roping Fu Cheng into Blood Shadow was still very high. Wang Daoyuan was determined to get Fu Cheng. It would be best if he agreed to join Blood Shadow. However, if he did not agree, he could only refine him into a clone. Before making a move, he had to understand Fu Cheng's situation first. If this kid was one of the very few brokers with backing and he rashly tried to rope him in, it would be troublesome. In the next few days, Wang Daoyuan no longer stayed in the weapon workshop. Instead, he disguised himself as an itinerant cultivator and watched Fu Cheng from behind. After 3 days of investigation, he found out that Fu Cheng indeed did not have any backing. Moreover, Fu Cheng was not alone. He had 2 sons. His sons were not old and were only in their teens. One was immortal while the other had a spirit root, but his talent was similar to his. With family, there would be worries, and with worries, there would be weaknesses. After figuring out Fu Cheng's situation, Wang Daoyuan returned to the weapon workshop. The task of roping Fu Cheng into Blood Shadow was handed over to Wu Yi, the manager. In the evening, Wu Yi left the Immortal's welcome house and went to Fu Cheng's house to wait for him. After dark, Fu Cheng returned home and shouted, "Eldest, second, come out and eat." After saying that, he took out 2 bowls of spiritual grains from the storage bag at his waist and placed them on the table in the courtyard. The 2 half-grown children ran out of the house and each picked up a bowl to eat. Wu Yi threw a spirit stone, which happened to land on the table. Fu Cheng protected his sons behind him and cupped his hands. "Senior, may I know which one of you is here? Please give me your orders." Wu Yi's clone walked out of the shadows and said, "I need your help with something. Help me find a place where we can talk." Fu Cheng brought Wu Yi to the Taurus Inn. Wu Yi booked a superior room and set up a soundproof formation. He said, "I'm here because I have a great fortune to give you." Upon hearing this, Fu Cheng turned pale with fright. He immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. "Senior, please spare my life. Junior's cultivation level is low, so I can only make some money by introducing businesses. I can't earn any great fortune." Wu Yi was half persuading and half threatening him. "Even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for that cultivator son of yours. Don't tell me you want him to be like you and waste his whole life. Your cultivation path is hopeless, but your son is still young. If you agree to help me, your son will have better cultivation techniques and sufficient cultivation resources. It won't be impossible for him to build his foundation in the future. You're a smart person. If you don't agree, you know the consequences." Chapter 296. Fu Cheng looked like he was struggling. He wanted to refuse, but he didn't dare. He didn't have any backing, so he couldn't resist the coercion of a foundation establishment cultivator. Besides, his cultivation level was low and he didn't know anything about cultivation. His only value was that he was well informed. The person in front of him wanted him to do things for him, but it was only to help him gather information in Guiyan market. The risk wasn't high, and it wasn't much different from what he was doing now. If he followed the person in front of him, he would at most be implicated and lose the lives of the three of them. As long as the person in front of him didn't fall, the possibility of this happening wasn't high. If he agreed, the risk wouldn't be too high, and he would even get more cultivation resources. If he didn't agree, the three of them would die now. Fu Cheng gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He bowed and said, "Junior is willing to follow Senior and go through hell for Senior." Wu Yi said with a smile, "You are indeed a smart person. I won't let my people suffer losses. You don't have the qualifications to officially join the force behind me, and you don't even have the qualifications to know the name of the force. But as long as you can complete the task I give you, joining the force won't be a problem. As for your cultivator son, as long as he cultivates to the peak of qi refinement and contributes enough, he will get the chance to build his foundation. Your mortal son can also live a rich life. What I need you to do is very simple. You just need to help me find some people. These people have good talent and the potential to improve. They desire to improve their cultivation, but they lack resources and don't have a way to earn spirit stones. The best cultivation level is between the late stage of qi refinement and the middle stage of foundation establishment. I believe that with your ability, it won't be hard to find such people. People who had the potential and desire to improve their cultivation, but were extremely lacking in resources, were more likely to take risks. Such people wouldn't be the least concerned about danger. As long as they saw hope, they would be willing to do anything. The success rate of roping in such people was higher. Hearing Wu Yi's words, Fu Cheng sighed in relief. He only wanted him to find people, and not do anything dangerous. This task didn't conflict with his current job, and there wasn't any danger. He cupped his hands and said, "Senior, although Junior isn't talented, finding people is my specialty. But after Junior finds them, how should I deal with them, and how should I inform Senior?" Wu Yi smiled and said, "You don't need to do anything. Just do what you usually do. You just need to remember the target's whereabouts and situation. When I contact you, just tell me the target's situation. This is a small gift for our first meeting. As long as you work hard for me, your good days are still ahead." Then, he handed a storage pouch to Fu Cheng. Fu Cheng accepted the storage pouch and bowed. "Thank you for your reward, Senior. I will definitely do my best and not hesitate to go through fire and water." Wu Yi sent him away and continued to stay at the Golden Bull Inn. There were many Vice Hall Masters in Blood Shadow's stronghold, the welcoming Immortal's tower. It was too dangerous to cause trouble there. It was better to do it at the Golden Bull Tavern. Fu Cheng left the inn and returned home. He opened the storage bag and saw what was inside. He couldn't believe his eyes. Inside the storage bag were 1,000 spirit stones and 100 essence-gathering pills. Fu Cheng relied on running errands to attract business. Under normal circumstances, his monthly income was only 20 to 30 spirit stones. With these spirit stones, he had to feed 3 people and buy cultivation resources. There weren't many spirit stones left. Sometimes, it might not be enough. He had never had more than 100 spirit stones in his hands. Now, he actually had 1,000 spirit stones and 100 essence-gathering pills. He didn't even dare to think about having so many resources. Wu Yi had just casually given him so many resources. This made Fu Cheng even more reverent of the force behind Wu Yi. A powerful and mysterious force was even more difficult to get rid of, and there wouldn't be a situation where he was implicated. He was even more determined to join this force. As long as he could become an official member, his descendants wouldn't have to run around for a few spirit stones like him in the future. A month later, Wu Yi came to Fu Cheng's house again. Fu Cheng's ability to get things done was indeed not weak. In this month, he had found more than 10 targets that were passable. Among these targets, there were cultivators from the late stage of qi refinement to the mid-stage of foundation establishment. After all, Fu Cheng was only a mid-stage qi refinement cultivator. He wasn't very clear about the situation of foundation establishment cultivators. The situation of several foundation establishment cultivators was relatively simple. Since he didn't know much, the success rate of roping in these foundation establishment cultivators directly wouldn't be too high. He needed to observe for a period of time and figure out their specific situation before slowly roping them in. On the other hand, those late-stage qi refinement cultivators who weren't even 70 years old still had hope of reaching foundation establishment. Their need for resources was even more urgent. Furthermore, these people would be more loyal to him after being nurtured. In the past, Wang Daoyuan wanted to get 1 or 2 pieces of yin-yang purple jade and run away. However, Blood Shadow didn't know what was good for them. They set these **T rules and caused him to have to help them expand their strength in order to obtain yin-yang purple jade. It would be a pity if he only obtained 2 pieces of yin-yang purple jade after spending so much effort. He had to make sure that he did not expose his true form and take advantage of Blood Shadow. He even had to cultivate a force that was loyal to him within Blood Shadow. If possible, he had to turn Blood Shadow into a stable channel for him to obtain yin-yang purple jade. This was more difficult. At the very least, he had to deal with Scarlet Fox. Without the cooperation of a direct descendant of Blood Shadow, he couldn't even think about it. It was better to choose a late-stage qi refinement cultivator for the first time to rope in Blood Shadow. Among the candidates that Fu Cheng had provided, one was especially suitable. His name was Hu Jing, and he was an itinerant cultivator. He was about 60 years old and was at level 9 qi refinement. He was not proficient in the arts of cultivation and mainly relied on finding spirit herbs to earn resources. Under such circumstances, it was clear that this person was not weak to be able to reach level 9 qi refinement. He was only 10 years away from his last chance to reach foundation establishment at 70 years old. Under such circumstances, there was still hope for him to reach foundation establishment. However, for itinerant cultivators who did not have any skills, the chances were extremely slim. He might know that his chances were slim, but he was unwilling to give up. According to Fu Cheng's intelligence, Hu Jing still frequently entered the mountains to search for spirit herbs and had no intention of giving up. People who realized that their chances were slim but were unwilling were the best to rope in. It was like a drowning person who would grab onto a straw with all his might. Wu Yi asked Fu Cheng to bring him to the Golden Bull Inn. After bringing him to Wu Yi's room, Fu Cheng bade farewell and left. Hu Jing cupped his fists towards Wu Yi and said, "May I know why you've summoned me here, senior?" Wu Yi smiled and asked, "May I know if my little friend wants to reach foundation establishment?" Hearing this, Hu Jing was stunned and said with a bitter smile, which Qi refinement cultivator doesn't want to reach foundation establishment? It's just that how many people can successfully reach foundation establishment with their own abilities? Wu Yi smiled and said, I can give you a chance, but whether or not you can succeed will depend on your own performance. I don't lack foundation establishment pills, but foundation establishment pills have to be given to useful people. Hearing this, Hu Jing's eyes lit up and he bowed solemnly. If Senior can give me the chance to reach foundation establishment, I'm willing to be an ox or a horse to repay Senior's great kindness. Wu Yi was secretly delighted. This kind of person was indeed easy to rope in. With his words, the matter of recruitment could be considered half completed. The rest would depend on how bold this brat was. He said unhurriedly, help me do some work that licks blood from the edge of the blade. Earning spirit stones is not a problem. As long as you can show your worth, even if you can't gather enough spirit stones to buy a foundation establishment pill by the time you're 70 years old, I can still give you one. Hu Jing hesitated for a moment. Finally, his eyes shone with determination and he said, no matter how dangerous it is, I'm willing. Chapter 297. Wu Yi was secretly delighted. It was a success. He handed a jade scroll to Hu Jing and said, follow the instructions inside. If you do a good job, you can join the force behind me and become my direct subordinate. Hu Jing took the jade scroll and used his divine sense to check it. After a while, Hu Jing cupped his hands and asked, Senior, how should we deal with this person after killing him? Wu Yi nodded in satisfaction. This was a smart person. He was not greedy for spirit stones. He was worth nurturing. He smiled and said, it's good that you can think this way. However, you don't have to worry about anything else. Just follow the instructions in the jade scroll and arrive at the designated place at the designated time. Leave after killing him. I'll arrange for people to take care of this. My subordinates don't have to worry about these trivial matters. They just have to focus on killing. Hu Jing nodded heavily, bowed, and left the place. The person he wanted to assassinate was the intelligence chief of the Red-Beard bandits. After Wu Yi defeated the underworld sect's caravan, the situation in Shanbei was unstable. If he provoked the underworld sect or the Beiyuan sword sect now, a war might break out. Apart from these two parties, the small human forces in Shanbei already had a hard time. After all, they were the pioneers of the human race. Everyone who expanded the living space for the human race was worthy of respect. Wang Daoyuan did not have time to help them, but he did not want to take advantage of them either. If he could not touch the human forces, he could not touch the half-demon forces either. Most of them were neutral. If he provoked them, he would be causing trouble for the human race in Shanbei. If he provoked the demons, it would be even riskier. These people were not to be trifled with. If he provoked them, another war between the human race and the demon race might break out. In the entire Shanbei, the only people he could touch were the itinerant cultivators and the Red-Beard bandits. The itinerant cultivators did not have high bounties. The best targets were the Red-Beard bandits. The Red-Beard bandits were hated by everyone in Shanbei and Shanbei. The main targets of the Red-Beard bandits were the small human forces and the weak half-demon tribes. They rarely touched the demon race and the large sections. Wang Daoyuan had no emotional pressure to find trouble with the Red-Beard bandits. Moreover, these people had caused too much trouble. Many forces had put a bounty on their heads. With all kinds of bounties added up, a small Qi condensation leader was worth thousands of spirit stones. Hu Jing's target was a small leader in charge of intelligence. In terms of status, he could be said to be in the top 3 under the foundation building realm. With a bounty of 5,000 spirit stones, his value was comparable to that of an ordinary foundation building cultivator. The Red-Beard bandits had planted many spies in the returning Wild Goose City Square. The head of the intelligence network was also stationed in the city square for a long period of time to gather information about the various factions. Small matters could be sent through jade talismans, but Zifu disciples could intercept low-grade jade talismans. Therefore, whenever there was important information, the intelligence chief would personally run to Huiyen Mountain to pass on the message. Blood Shadow had bribed a few of the Red-Beard Bandits' spies and found out that the Red-Beard Bandits had recently obtained a few important pieces of information. The head of the intelligence agency was planning to personally report the situation, so it was a good opportunity to intercept and kill them. In the past, Blood Shadow didn't have the confidence to deal with the Crimson Beard Bandits. Firstly, it was because of the issue of strength. Zifu disciples couldn't be easily dealt with, and 3 late-stage Foundation establishment stewards added together weren't enough for the Crimson Beard Bandits. Secondly, he wanted to continue rearing pigs. An assassin organization like Blood Shadow would only have more business when the situation was unstable. When the situation was calm and everyone was busy developing, who would put out a bounty for killing? The Red-Beard Bandits were a troublemaker. Only when the situation was unstable would Blood Shadow have more business. Scarlet Fox didn't want to take down the Red-Beard Bandits, but he didn't forbid his subordinates from attacking them either. Others didn't have the motivation or ability to kill the Red-Beard Bandits, but Wang Daoyuan did. If he wanted to quickly gather 350,000 contribution points, the best goal was to wipe out the entire Red-Beard Bandits. Just the Red-Beard Bandits alone were worth 600,000 spirit stones. In addition to the 5 Foundation establishment leaders, this was more than the price of a yin-yang purple jade. At present, Wang Daoyuan didn't have much of a chance of winning against just one of the Red-Beard Bandits, let alone 2 of them working together. However, he was only at the 7th stage of Foundation establishment. Once his cultivation reached the 9th stage, it wouldn't be a big problem. During this period of time, he would refine a few late-stage Foundation establishment clones. When the time came, he would bring the clones to cripple the Red-Beard Bandits and let Wu Yi pick up the heads. Then, he would have a yin-yang purple jade. He estimated that it would take more than 10 years for his cultivation to reach the 9th stage of Foundation establishment. By then, Wu Yi's subordinates should have a certain scale. The contribution points that he had accumulated over 10 years wouldn't be too far away from a yin-yang purple jade. After taking down the Red-Beard Bandits, he would have 2 yin-yang purple jades. 3 days later, Hu Jing came to Wu Yi's room at the Taurus Tavern and took out a head from his storage bag. It was the head of the Red-Beard Bandits' intelligence leader. After checking it, Wu Yi put away the head and handed him 2,500 spirit stones. He said, "According to the rules of the organization behind me, after completing a bounty mission, the executor will receive half of the reward and the other half will belong to the organization. I'll give you contribution points for handing over the bounty. Not only do you need spirit stones to purchase important resources like Foundation establishment pills from the organization, but you also need contribution points. You have 2,500 contribution points now. According to the rules, I can take 5% of the contribution points. However, this is your first mission, so I won't take any. Stay here and don't move around. I'll go and report your information. When the higher-ups issue your command token, you'll be considered an official member of the organization." After he finished speaking, he left the Taurus Tavern and took a few detours before returning to the Welcome Immortals Tower to meet Scarlet Fox. When he arrived at Scarlet Fox's cave, he handed the head of the Red-Beard Bandits leader to Scarlet Fox and reported Hu Jing's situation. Scarlet Fox asked, "You want to make a move on the Red-Beard Bandits?" Wu Yi smiled and said, "If I want to recruit people, I must have enough missions for them to complete. The Netherworld sect and Gue Yuan Sword sect can't be provoked anymore. Otherwise, a war might break out and it won't be good for our business. However, provoking the Red-Beard Bandits is different. No matter how much we provoke them, it won't break out into a war. After killing a few small leaders, they'll definitely provoke a few large and medium-sized organizations to vent their anger. If the situation is a little more chaotic, our business will be better and we can even increase their bounty. You can't just raise pigs without eating meat. It's not bad to take out 1 or 2 pigs to eat meat occasionally. Scarlet Fox pondered for a moment and said, "Your idea is good. It's not worth it to let the Red-Beard bandits loose. It's not bad to kill a few small leaders occasionally. You have a good eye. This Hu Jing is a promising talent." After she finished speaking, she took out a jade slip and used her divine sense to inscribe something on it. After a few minutes, she handed the jade slip to Wu Yi and said, "Give the jade slip to Green Wolf." Green Wolf was Scarlet Fox's direct subordinate. He was in charge of managing the personnel of the Shanbei branch and was in charge of managing the information of all branch members. New members had to report to him and he would issue a member token. Wu Yi took the jade slip and left the cave to look for Green Wolf. Green Wolf's cultivation was at the 5th layer of foundation building. He basically didn't move around outside, so most assassins had never seen him before. Wu Yi handed the jade slip to him. He didn't say anything and took the jade slip to examine it with his divine sense. Then, he took out a beast skin book. On the beast skin book was written, 4th Manager. On the 3rd page, he branded the information on the jade slip. Then, he took out a blood shadow token and wrote something on the back of the token. 15 minutes later, he handed the token to Wu Yi and said, "Manager Wu, from now on, this Hu Jing is an outer member of our branch." Chapter 298. Wu Yi took the token and left the underground stronghold, heading to the Taurus Inn. When he arrived at his previous room, Hu Jing was still waiting there. Seeing Wu Yi come in, Hu Jing immediately cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Senior." Wu Yi smiled and said, "You are now my direct subordinate." Hu Jing's face was full of joy and was about to bow. Wu Yi said seriously, "Don't be anxious. Before that, I need to tell you the rules. First, you are not allowed to leak the name of the organization. Once it is leaked, the person who leaked it and the person who knows it will die. If you meet cultivators who know the existence of the organization, kill them if you can, and report to me if you can't. Second, you don't need to contact any clients, and you don't need to accept any bounty missions outside. All your missions will be given to you by me. If you discover anything, report it to me. You are now an outer member, so this is all you need to know. After you reach Foundation establishment and become an inner member, you will be qualified to know more. Can you do these 2 things? Hu Jing bowed and said, "I can do it." Wu Yi smiled with satisfaction. "Good, it's good that you can do it. From now on, you are the subordinate of the 4th steward of the Blood Shadow Mountains Northern Branch. I am the 4th steward, your immediate superior." Then, he gave him a black iron token and said, "This is your token. Just drip a drop of blood on it and it will recognize you as its master. In the future, you don't need to look for me if you need anything. You can contact me through the token." Hu Jing bowed and said, "Greetings, steward." Wu Yi nodded and left the Taurus Inn. For safety's sake, he would change places and inns before continuing to recruit people. Wu Yi was already on the right track, and the Wu clan's equipment forging workshop was also overseen by Bai Sheng. Wang Daoyuan was free now, and it was time to focus on improving his cultivation. Buying of the White Fox tribe would come to the equipment forging workshop about every 4 or 5 months to ask Wang Daoyuan and Bai Sheng to help her forge. The main material of the refining materials she sent was no longer the golden jade spirit plant, but the bones of demonic beasts. Based on these demon beast bones, Wang Daoyuan could tell that it was a wolf-type demon beast, but he couldn't tell its specific species. It seemed that the White Fox tribe was indeed attacking the demons. As a human, they naturally didn't mind watching the conflict between the demon race and the half-demon race. The more intense the fight, the better. Only when the demons and half-demons were crippled could the human race develop and grow stronger in the north of the mountain. There was no need for Wang Daoyuan to worry about refining weapons. Using demonic beast bones to refine artifacts, that was Bai Sheng's specialty. Bai Sheng's divine sense wasn't enough to complete the tool inscriptions on his own, so Wang Daoyuan had to do it personally. As a result, Wang Daoyuan had a lot of free time to cultivate in seclusion. 7 years later, he reached the 8th level of foundation establishment. With his current abilities, he would not be at a disadvantage against most peak foundation establishment cultivators. Bai Sheng had also achieved remarkable results in the past few years. He had earned more than 100,000 spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan also had more than 400,000 spirit stones in his hands. Wu Yi was not idle either. With Fu Cheng's help, the success rate of roping in rogue cultivators was very high. After 7 years, he already had more than 20 late-stage Qi refinement cultivators, 5 early-stage foundation establishment cultivators and 1 mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator under him. Even though there was still a gap between him and the other 3 stewards, the speed at which he was expanding his strength was way too fast. The other 3 stewards only had a dozen or so foundation establishment cultivators and 100 or so Qi refinement cultivators under them after decades of hard work. However, Wu Yi only took a few years to have a third of their strength. The Scarlet Fox relied on Wu Yi even more and gave him priority when the Shanbei branch received easy missions. Wu Yi had accumulated close to 100,000 contribution points in the past few years and was one step closer to redeeming the Yin-Yang Purple Jade. His cultivation had also increased slightly and was not far from Foundation Establishment Level 9. The Scarlet Beard Bandits were disgusted as well. No one touched Foundation Establishment cultivators when they went out, but Qi refinement cultivators were ambushed the moment they left the mountain. The Scarlet Beard Bandits had set up many ambushes but to no avail. The Qi refinement cultivators were all in danger and did not dare to leave the mountain. In order to boost their morale, the Scarlet Beard Bandits had mobilized many times to attack the small half-demon tribes and weak demons. The effect was very obvious. The Shanbei branch was in a state of panic and the bounty for the Scarlet Beard Bandits had increased by a lot. The bounty for the Scarlet Beard Bandits had also increased to 400,000 spirit stones. The Scarlet Beard Bandits were already busy enough. In order to prevent them from going crazy, it was time to change targets. One could not only catch one sheep, it would be a huge loss if the sheep was killed. Coincidentally, the conflict between the Guiyuan sword sect and the underworld sect had subsided. It was time to provoke them so that they would not be idle. Wang Daoyuan did not need to worry about the Scarlet Beard Bandits and the weapon workshop. His strength was below the Violet Palace realm and it was not a problem for him to stay alive. It was time to go out and cause trouble. Wang Daoyuan still had a huge shortcoming, which was that he was not fast enough to escape. Although the cloud mist escape was brilliant and was very suitable for dodging ambushes in battle, it was not suitable for long-distance escape. Even in the river, his speed could not be compared to cultivators of the same level. In order to stay alive, he had to have a reliable escape method. It was not good for spirit beasts to appear in the Shanbei branch, and he did not have a better escape method. The only reliable method was to rely on magic tools. He had the method and materials to refine the crane feather boat, but the crane feather boat was too weak. In the past few years, he had been thinking about how to improve the crane feather boat. The 2 materials for the crane feather boat were not good enough for him as they were too weak. He planned to use the golden jade peach wood to refine a flying magic tool similar to the crane feather boat. He did not have to worry about the buoyancy as he had a suitable solution. After some simple tests, he discovered that the aerodynamic principles from his previous life also existed in this world. Of course, his understanding of this principle in his previous life was limited to junior high school physics. He did not understand any more advanced knowledge. Simply put, if an object had a fast airflow above it and a slow airflow below it, the pressure below it would be greater than the airflow above it. The object would be forced upwards. As long as the force was strong enough, the object would be able to fly. The wings of airplanes and birds were raised at the top and flat or concave at the bottom. This caused the airflow above it to be faster than the airflow below it. The wings of airplanes and birds would be lifted upwards. If a flying magic tool was added with wings, regardless of whether it was a bird's wings or an airplane's wings, it would be able to generate lift during flight. This way, there would be no need for crane feathers which were naturally born with the ability to float. Furthermore, the main material would not be light cloud wood. He only knew the basic principle, but did not know how to calculate the amount of lift. He could only slowly experiment. He wouldn't do experiments himself. With the time flow and the spirit orb, it would be foolish of him to do experiments outside of the spirit orb. He threw Bai Sheng into the spirit pearl space and let him research the most suitable shape for the flying magic tool. There was no need to change the tool pattern. The crane feather boat's tool pattern had to be changed a little, and the tool pattern to increase the strength was more or less enough. Every mature magic tool was created through the painstaking efforts of countless tool refinement masters. The shape, material, and tool pattern of the magic tool were all compatible with each other to achieve a balance. If he wanted to make a big change, he would have to put in a lot of effort. However, with the time flow 40 times faster and the tool refinement master's clone, Wang Daoyuan could still afford to play with it. Moreover, he did not need the magic tool to be perfect. As long as it could fly faster than all Foundation establishment cultivators and not be easily destroyed, it would be fine. Chapter 299. After that, Wang Daoyuan replaced Bai Sheng to look after the Wu clan's equipment forging workshop. In the past 7 years, Bai Sheng had made enough magic weapons. There were still more than 30 magic weapons left in the shop. For the time being, there was no need to replenish the stock. He only needed to take orders for magic weapons. Currently, Bai Ying was the only one who came to the shop to order magic weapons. If she did not come, there would be no one else. Wang Daoyuan simply meditated and cultivated in the shop. If anyone came, he would greet them. If no one came, he would focus on improving his cultivation level. Bai Ying came again midway and brought some wolf bones. She asked him to help her make a few flying swords. The flying swords were ordinary second-grade magic weapons. She did not give him the method of making them. She only mentioned some simple requirements. Using demonic beast bones to make weapons, the 2 processes of forging and refining were basically skipped. He just used the smelting method to fuse some metal essence into the wolf bones to increase their strength. In a month, Wang Daoyuan made 5 magic weapons and gave them to Bai Ying. Bai Ying only gave him a total of 7 sets of materials and asked him to make 2 flying swords. The reward was 5,000 spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan made 5 magic weapons and sold 3 to Bai Ying at the market price. In total, he received more than 30,000 spirit stones. Half a year later, Bai Sheng stayed in the space of the spiritual pearl for 20 years and finally made a flying magic weapon. Because it was imitating the formation pattern of the crane feather boat, it took less time. If one were to create a magic tool from scratch, it would take at least 100 years to do so. This magic weapon did not have the shape of a flying boat at all. It looked more like an eagle with wings in the shape of an eagle's wings. The entire flying magic weapon was like an eagle catching prey on the ground. Its wings were half folded and it swooped down. This was also to increase its speed. Its length, including the tail, was 8 feet long. The tail was 2 feet long. Excluding the wings, it was 3.5 feet wide. Because the wings were half folded, the wingspan was only 7.5 feet wide. The proportions of the body were not exactly based on eagle demonic beasts. Some adjustments were made. Bai Sheng had already engraved the pattern of the crane feather boat on it. In addition, he had also engraved a pattern to increase its strength. In order to deceive the public, he even painted the entire artifact into a dark color that was commonly seen in eagle-type demon birds. Because it looked like an eagle, Wang Daoyuan named it Flying Kite. The space in the spiritual bead was still too small to be used to test the speed of the kite. He could only estimate its flying speed. At normal speeds, it could reach a speed of slightly more than 3,000 miles per hour. At full power, its speed could reach about 4,000 miles per hour. If he could reach this estimated speed, he would be able to surpass the maximum speed of a Foundation establishment cultivator's sword kinesis flight, which would be considered to have achieved his goal. Because it had just been researched and hadn't been deeply improved, the consumption of spiritual energy was much greater than that of the crane feather boat. When riding a flying kite, the consumption of spiritual power was about the same as when riding a flying sword. Because it was faster than flying on the sword, the consumption of spiritual energy was more cost-effective. As for the load capacity, the flying kite could carry 2 people at most. In other aspects, it was similar to the crane feather boat from before. He only needed to use spiritual power to drive the kite to fly, and he only needed to use the power of his divine sense to control the direction of flight. This was much better than sword kinesis flight. The one that Bai Sheng took out was only an experimental product. The pattern on it had been improved a lot, but there were also many problems left. If he used it directly, it would be easy for problems to arise. To be safe, it was better to refine another one. After using a month's time, Wang Daoyuan refined a new flying kite. Because his divine sense cultivation was stronger than Bai Sheng's, his standard in the area of pattern was much higher, and there were fewer flaws. The strength of the flying kite that he personally refined could barely reach the level of a second-tier high-grade artifact. It was definitely much weaker than a second-tier high-grade defensive artifact, but compared to other types of artifacts, it wasn't much worse. Even a peak Foundation establishment cultivator wouldn't be able to easily destroy a flying kite. Unfortunately, he didn't have any wind attribute materials. Otherwise, he could use the smelting method to extract the essence of the wind attribute materials and merge them into the wings of the kite. He could even directly use wind attribute materials to refine the wings, which should increase the speed by quite a bit. Moreover, the main material of this flying kite was only golden jade peach wood, which was too simple. If he could use soft materials on the wings, he could even change the width of the wings. Just like some of the fighter jets in his previous life, when taking off, the wings would stretch to the maximum to increase the lift and carry more people. When escaping, the wings would be half retracted to increase the speed. These were all areas of improvement in the future. Now that he didn't have so many materials on hand, it was already very good to be able to reach the current level. Wang Daoyuan was only a second-tier high-grade artifact refiner now. When his artifact refinement reached the 3rd tier, the flying kite speed should increase by a lot if he improved it. After dealing with the flying boat, he left his clone, Bai Sheng, in the Wu clan's equipment forging workshop to continue earning spirit stones. He left the Guiyan market and went out to cause trouble. His destination was the Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis, which was thousands of miles north of the Guiyan market. That old fellow, Chen Ji, was very likely hiding in the Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis. To Wang Daoyuan, that bastard was always a hidden danger. He used Blood Shadow's intelligence system, but he didn't find anyone in Shanbei who had established a purple palace in the past few years. Therefore, Chen Ji should still be a peak Foundation establishment cultivator. With Wang Daoyuan's current methods, he could defeat most peak Foundation establishment cultivators. Chen Ji didn't need to think too much about the refined corpses and Dharma artifacts that he had inherited from the 10,000 Corpse spiritual master. A peak foundation establishment cultivator like him couldn't activate the Dharma artifacts left behind by a golden core cultivator. Even if Qin Ji could barely activate some third-tier low-grade Dharma artifacts, he couldn't exert much power. Against a powerful second-tier high-grade Dharma artifact, he couldn't crush it. Even if he couldn't defeat it, didn't he still have the flying kite? He could temporarily avoid it and rely on his speed advantage to contend with it. No matter how strong a foundation establishment cultivator was, he wasn't a Purple Palace cultivator. This was a qualitative difference. A foundation establishment cultivator couldn't activate a third-tier Dharma artifact for a long time. As for the refined corpses, Chen Ji didn't dare to touch them at all. Refined corpses had a tendency to rebel against their masters. The more powerful they were, the higher the probability of them rebelling. If a foundation establishment cultivator dared to command a golden core refined corpse, he would definitely be torn apart alive. Even if Chen Ji had refined corpses, they were newly refined after receiving the inheritance. The core inheritance of the myriad corpse Taoist was in his hands. Even if Chen Ji obtained some corpse refining techniques, he wouldn't be that strong. Not to mention, the Netherworld Sex Foundation establishment cultivator had caused a lot of trouble in the Mirror Treasured Lake. He should have clashed with Chen Ji and consumed a lot of his strength. Furthermore, he had the Wuta Divine Lightning. Dealing with second-tier refined corpses wouldn't be a problem. After leaving the returning Wild Goose Market, he traveled north for more than 500 kilometers and found a secluded place. He summoned the flying kite and tested its speed. After flying for 2 hours, he had traveled 3,500 kilometers. The limit of a peak foundation establishment cultivator's flying speed was 3,500 kilometers in 2 hours. Wang Daoyuan wanted to test the limit of speed. He increased the input of spiritual power and flew north. The flying kite's speed also increased rapidly. When it reached 3,500 kilometers in 2 hours, the flying kite began to tremble violently. He didn't dare to continue increasing his speed. Instead, he slowly slowed down. He let out a long sigh. It wasn't easy to improve a flying Dharma artifact. Bai Sheng's clone had spent 20 years, but there were still hidden problems. Soon after, he controlled the flying kite and maintained its speed at 3,400 kilometers in 2 hours. After flying for several thousand kilometers, there were no signs of instability. Chapter 300. Wang Daoyuan wasn't sure what the problem was. The structure of the kite was simple. It mimicked the shape of an eagle. Its wings and tail were fixed, so there shouldn't be a problem. The eagle-type demon bird's flying speed was much faster than that of humans. The golden-winged demon bird's cultivation was at the mid-grade of the second rank. Flying 5,000 miles in 2 hours was like playing around, and he didn't see it shaking in the air. The runes used for flying were all copied from the crane feather boat. The crane feather boat was a mature magic tool, so the patterns wouldn't have any fatal flaws. The biggest possibility was that the patterns didn't match the shape of the kite. An upper-grade second-stage weapon refiner could improve the patterns, but it wasn't something that could be done in a day. In any case, this flying kite could fly for about 3,400 kilometers in 2 hours, which was enough for it to fly faster than a peak foundation establishment cultivator. He didn't dare to go against a Zifu realm cultivator, so he didn't want to fly faster than one. As for solving the problem, he wasn't in a hurry. Once he was done with Shanbei, he would throw Bai Sheng into the spiritual pearl and let him study it. 1,000 miles south of the oasis, he put away the kite and flew on his sword. The oasis was located at the southern edge of the desert. The oasis was oval in shape. It was 500 miles long from east to west and 300 miles wide from north to south. The oasis was low-lying. There was a small mountain range in the north and south. The spring water on the mountain converged into streams that flowed to the center of the oasis, nourishing the basin between the two mountains. In the center of the oasis was a circular lake with a diameter of 100 miles. Because the two mountains surrounded the oasis, it was difficult for the wind to blow in. The surface of the lake was calm all year round, so it was called the Jewel Mirror Lake. There was an upper-grade second-stage non-elemental spiritual vein in the oasis. The south of the oasis was a sparse grassland while the other three sides were deserts. Under such circumstances, the oasis was worthy of being called a treasure land. The environment around the lake was harsh. There were no large groups of demon beasts or half-demon tribes nearby. It was said that many years ago, there was a group of demon beasts in the lake, but they were exterminated by the half-demons. After that, the lake became the territory of a half-demon tribe. Before the imperial family of Zhao was exterminated, they had crossed the Huiyan mountain many times to conquer the demon race and built many human strongholds in the north of the mountain. Many small forces of the human tribe in the northern mountains were left behind at that time. Where there were people and spiritual energy, there would be itinerant cultivators. Some desperados scurried around, looking for a place to settle down. Several hundred years ago, a group of desperate rogue cultivators in the late stage of Foundation establishment discovered the Mirror Gem Lake Oasis. As for the half-demons who occupied this place, the strongest among them was only at the late Foundation establishment stage. They couldn't stop this group of desperados at all. In the end, the half-demon tribe either died or fled. This place became the territory of rogue cultivators. The spirit veins of the Jewel Mirror Lake Oasis were truly of a low grade. Zifu disciples and rank 3 monstrous beasts didn't care about this place at all, while rank 2 monstrous beasts didn't have the ability to take this place. Moreover, the Mirror Lake Oasis wasn't that big. Building a foundation here would have little future prospects. There weren't any powerful forces nearby, and the forces thousands of miles away didn't have to come all the way here just for a rank 2 spirit vein. As a result, the Mirror Lake Oasis became a place that no one cared about. After the reconciliation between the Ghost Sect and the Demon Tribe in the north of the mountain, the number of the human tribe in the north of the mountain rose sharply, and there were more rogue cultivators. Due to the uniqueness of the Mirror Lake Oasis, it attracted even more rogue cultivators. Desperados also liked to stay here. Many years ago, Chen Ji and Qi Yun were one of these desperados. The eastern shore of the Mirror Lake was a market square. It was a bit of a stretch to call it a market square. There were only a few buildings that could barely be considered shops. Everyone else was setting up stalls. There were no rules here, and no one was in charge. Some cultivators relied on their high cultivation to rob cultivators doing business, but no one cared. Once a conflict broke out, whoever won was in the right. If the others weren't strong enough, they could only blame themselves for being unlucky. This was a place where the strong were respected. The fist was the law. In the past, there were people who wanted to set rules here, but they were beaten to death. Wang Daoyuan stepped on the Tiger Fiend sword and landed at the edge of the market square. He wanted to find trouble with Chen Ji, so he had to understand the situation of this old fellow. A place like the market square where crooks mixed in with honest folk was the best place to gather information. As soon as he landed, a 9th-level Foundation establishment cultivator wearing a gray robe came forward. This guy didn't state his intentions, and just stared at Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan was a bit scared. He used a disguise technique to change his appearance. It was different from when he was at the returning wild goose market, but he still looked like a middle-aged man. He didn't hide his cultivation. 8th-level Foundation establishment was enough to scare many people here. If his cultivation was too low, there would be a lot of trouble. He also didn't reveal anything unusual. This person kept staring at him, he didn't know what was wrong with him. Wang Daoyuan took a few steps to the right, wanting to go around the gray-robed cultivator. The gray-robed cultivator also took a few steps to the right, continuing to block the way. This guy was sincerely looking for trouble. Wang Daoyuan naturally couldn't back down. Rogue cultivators bullied the weak and feared the strong. If you gave in once, there would be more people coming to bully you. Wang Daoyuan asked, "Daoyu, what's the meaning of this? Tell me." The gray-robed cultivator took out a storage bag and said with a smile, "As long as you know the rules. Here's 1,000 spirit stones. The short sword in your hand belongs to me. Seeing that you're an 8th level foundation establishment cultivator, I'll have to put in a lot of effort to deal with you. If you know what's good for you, leave the short sword and scram with the spirit stones." Wang Daoyuan held the hilt of the tiger-killing sword and released his powerful spiritual sense. Using the misty cloud escape, he flitted past the gray-robed cultivator. A pitch-black cloud enveloped the surrounding Tenjiang. He deliberately held back and didn't use the cloud mist escape at full strength. After a few breaths of time, the black mist dissipated. The gray-robed cultivator still maintained his original posture, but the storage bag in his hand and waist were gone. Wang Daoyuan held the 2 storage bags in his hand and said with a smile, "Mirror Treasure Lake's people are really simple. I just arrived and someone is already giving me all his belongings." The surrounding cultivators all had strange expressions. This was the first time someone praised Mirror Treasure Lake like this. They were flattered. As soon as he finished speaking, the gray-robed cultivator fell to the ground. His head hit the ground and separated from his body. However, no blood flowed out. If one looked carefully, there was a layer of black ice at the cut on his neck. This time, the surrounding cultivators were truly shocked. Killing someone 1 level above him in an instant, and no one saw how he did it. Wang Daoyuan spoke again, "I don't have a habit of using people to refine tools. Whoever wants this dead dog can take it." With that, he turned around and walked away. Only after he walked more than 20 feet away did a few cultivators dare to come forward and snatch the corpse. On a tall building in the market, 2 white-haired old cultivators, one with a long beard and the other with a short beard, were watching this scene. The long-bearded cultivator asked, "Did you see anything?" The short-bearded cultivator replied, "Spiritual sense suppression, causing the opponent to lose focus for a moment." Then, using a brilliant escape technique, he quickly passed by the opponent and used the short sword in his hand to cut off the opponent's head. This person's spiritual power carried a kind of cold yin qi, able to freeze the blood of a 9th-layer foundation establishment cultivator. His escape technique was extremely extraordinary, but I couldn't see anything special about it. Moreover, this person's spiritual sense cultivation is not below yours or mine. The long-bearded cultivator said with a smile, "The first part is correct, but the last part is bullshit." "What do you mean not below yours or mine? Why don't you try competing with him? This brat's spiritual sense cultivation is stronger than both of us peak foundation establishment cultivators. I really don't know how he cultivated it." The short-bearded cultivator said with a helpless smile, "Can't I talk big? Then how should we deal with this person? Should we deal with him or rope him in?" Chapter 301. The long-bearded cultivator stroked his long beard and pondered for a long time before saying, "This person is at the 8th level of foundation establishment, and his spiritual sense cultivation is above ours. This kind of person is either a direct disciple of a great power and has come out to gain experience. If we take care of this kind of person, it will be hard to leave anyone alive in the entire Mirror Treasure Lake. Or he has great luck and great talent. This kind of person's cultivation progress is extremely fast and is not to be trifled with. If we make a move on him, it will be fine if we succeed. But if he escapes, then we will wait for him to come back and kill us in a few years. In my opinion, we should not act blindly without thinking first. If this person is only here to travel, then we should not disturb him. If he is staying here for a long time, then we can also rope him in. As long as he does not interfere with our plan, we should not make a move. If he insists on opposing us, then we can only send him away. The short-bearded cultivator nodded and said, let's do it this way. This person casually revealed two methods that we cannot compare to. This person is also a decisive person and does not seem like a greenhorn. He must have some trump cards that he has not used yet. We really do not have much confidence in taking him down. If we can avoid making a move, then we should try not to. Wang Daoyuan knew nothing about the two's plan and was still strolling around the market. The loose cultivators of Mirror Treasure Lake really had no taboos. Returning Wild Goose Market could not sell anything related to demonic beasts, but here, they did not care at all. Demonic beast bones, horns, scales, and so on were all available. The highest cultivation here was Peak Foundation Establishment, and they could only hunt rank 2 demonic beasts. Thus, most of the demonic beast materials here were mid to low grade rank 2. There were very few high-grade rank 2 materials and no rank 3 materials at all. Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis was surrounded by barren land. Spiritual herbs were extremely rare, and they were all sand spirit plants. Their value was not high, so he only bought some rank 2 sand spirit plant seeds as backup. He did not linger around the stall for too long. Instead, he walked to the front of the tallest building in the market. This was a restaurant called the Mirror Lake Restaurant. Wang Daoyuan walked into the restaurant and saw that it was quite lively inside. The first floor of the restaurant was a lobby that took up more than half an acre of land. There were 40 to 50 tables, most of which were occupied. He chose a table in the corner and sat down. He shouted, "Shopkeeper, give me a few dishes and 2 jars of good wine." Not long after, a late-stage chi refinement cultivator ran over with 2 wine jars and said, "Senior, this is your wine. The dishes will be served soon." Wang Daoyuan nodded and didn't say anything. The cultivator then left. This waiter was the first chi condensation cultivator he had seen in this place. In this kind of environment where the strong preyed on the weak, even an early foundation establishment cultivator would not be able to survive, let alone a chi refinement cultivator. After a quarter of an hour, the waiter came back with a wooden tray. There were 6 dishes on the tray. He placed the 6 dishes on the table beside Wang Daoyuan and said with a smile, "Senior, your dishes are all here. May I ask if you have any other orders?" Wang Daoyuan opened a jar of wine and poured a bowl of wine. He said, "That's all." When going out, he still had to be careful. He released a few soul-chasing bees and tasted the dishes. In a place far away from the emperor, he didn't have to worry about people recognizing his soul-chasing bees. Besides, even if someone recognized them, it wasn't a big deal. What did it have to do with Wang Daoyuan that a rogue cultivator had soul-chasing bees on him? The soul-chasing bees didn't have any abnormalities, so he ate and drank without worry. The taste of this wine was not bad. It was slightly better than scarlet blood wine but much worse than spirit peach dew. It should have been stored for about 100 years. He was used to drinking spirit peach dew that was a few hundred years old, so this wine was nothing to him. After tasting all 6 dishes, the taste was still passable. Not long after, a cultivator came to the table and asked with a smile, "May I ask if this Daoyu can have a bowl of wine to drink?" This person had a pointed mouth, monkey cheeks, and a rosacea nose. He was obviously a drunkard. He was also an 8th layer foundation establishment cultivator. If his cultivation was low, he wouldn't dare to come here to drink wine. Wang Daoyuan poured a bowl of wine and said with a smile, "My wine can be drunk by others, but not everyone can drink it. I wonder, how does Daoyu want to drink this bowl of wine?" The rosacea-nosed cultivator smiled. "We're the same in terms of cultivation. I saw Daoyu's situation when you first came here. I'm afraid I can't even take one move from you in terms of fighting power. I don't have anything good on me, but I'm quite well informed. How about exchanging information for wine? Wang Daoyuan nodded. It just so happens that I'm interested in some strange stories. I only know that Treasured Mirror Lake is a rogue cultivator's territory. I wonder if there are any strange stories here. He stared at the bowl of wine on the table and revealed an awkward smile. Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and pushed the bowl of wine in front of him. He picked up the bowl and drained it in one gulp. He then said with a carefree voice, "Daoyu is really straightforward. I won't hide it anymore. This treasured Mirror Lake oasis is only this big, and there are hundreds of Foundation establishment rogue cultivators gathered here. Fighting and killing are common occurrences. No matter how bizarre the death, it's not rare, so it can't be considered strange. Only a dozen or so years ago did a strange thing happen." At this point, the rosacea-nosed cultivator stopped. Wang Daoyuan really wanted to slap him to death. Could this grandson be a storyteller? These words were really too suspenseful. He waved his hand, and the wine flew out of the jar and into the bowl in front of the rosacea-nosed cultivator, filling it to the brim. The rosacea-nosed cultivator picked up the bowl and drank it in one gulp. He burped and said, "A dozen or so years ago, a dozen or so rogue cultivators came from the south, looking for something nearby. Some bold local cultivators had a conflict with them. Although they were all rogue cultivators, they should be disciples of some big power. They cooperated with each other in fights, and a few of them could beat a dozen or so local cultivators of the same level. The local cultivators didn't dare to provoke them and let them search the treasured Mirror Lake area. They tossed and turned in the oasis for several months, but didn't find anything. Then they tossed and turned in the South Mountain and North Mountain for half a year, but they still didn't find anything. Later, they began to search the desert outside the oasis. After tossing and turning for more than a year, they had a fight with someone more than 300 kilometers east of the oasis. According to passing cultivators, they encountered a group of second-rank high-grade refined corpses. These refined corpses were both humanoid and demonic beasts. Their bodies were as tough as iron, and cultivators of the same level were no match for them. At this point, he paused. Wang Daoyuan naturally knew what he meant and poured him another bowl of wine. The rosacea-nosed cultivator finished the wine and continued, "This group of cultivators wasn't weak in fights. After fighting with the refined corpses for a long time, only 4 or 5 of them were injured. Seeing that they couldn't take down the refined corpses, they left the place. They didn't return to the oasis, but went straight south. After about a month, another group of cultivators dressed as rogue cultivators arrived. This time, there were even more people, about 30 of them. All of them were in the late stage of Foundation establishment, and a few of them were experts from the group that had come last time. This group of people came prepared. They used spirit talismans and magic weapons that were quite effective against the refined corpses. At first, they had the upper hand and suppressed the refined corpses. Later on, for some reason, the refined corpses suddenly became ferocious and defeated this group of people again. Furthermore, they left behind 5 or 6 lives. The rosacea-nosed cultivator paused again. Wang Daoyuan couldn't take it anymore. Every time he reached a critical point, he would stop. This was testing his patience. Chapter 302. Seeing Wang Daoyuan's unfriendly expression, the rosacea-nosed cultivator was somewhat afraid. Wang Daoyuan took out the tiger fiend sword and patted the wine jar, saying, "Speak properly, and this jar of wine is yours. If you play any more tricks, I'll let you have a taste of the tiger fiend sword." The rosacea-nosed cultivator was so frightened that he started sweating. He didn't dare to play any more tricks and swallowed his saliva, saying, "That group of cultivators lost 5 or 6 companions and more than 10 were injured. They retreated to the south. A year later, more than 30 people came again. This time, they brought a low-grade grade 3 magic weapon that looked like a bell. When the refined corpses came out, a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator shook the bell, and all the corpses collapsed to the ground. The other cultivators took the opportunity to set the corpses on fire and burn them all. After dealing with the refined corpses, the group began to dig underground to find the place where the refined corpses came out. Later, they seemed to have really dug something out and more than 10 people went down. The 20 or so people waiting outside waited for a few days, but no one came up. They sent people down to search, but no one came up. A few people outside flew south, and not long after, the remaining 10 or so people left as well. Since then, that group of people never came up again, and the people below were never able to come up again. Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and pushed the wine jar to the rose-nosed cultivator, saying, "This jar of wine is yours." The rose-nosed cultivator held the jar and thanked him repeatedly, then went to an empty table to drink. Wang Daoyuan thought as he ate. The entrance to the secret realm where the myriad corpse Daoist died was indeed more than 150 kilometers east of the Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis. The place where the Netherworld sect cultivators encountered the Grade 2 refined corpses should be near the entrance to the secret realm. However, the refined corpses they encountered were definitely not the ones left behind by the myriad corpse Daoist. For a golden core Daoist to cultivate refined corpses, the corpses of golden core cultivators were not easy to find. Corpses below the Violet Palace realm would only be used if they encountered corpses of Foundation establishment cultivators with special constitutions and great potential. However, special constitutions were extremely rare, and 1 in 10,000 cultivators would be hard to find. It was impossible to have so many of them. Moreover, if a cultivator with a special physique was refined into a refined corpse, their strength would be quite frightening. The first time the cultivators of the Netherworld sect encountered a refined corpse, many of them would die. If a demon beast or a human cultivator accidentally entered a secret realm and died inside, it was not impossible for them to be corroded by the Yin Qi and turned into a naturally refined corpse. When the cultivators of the Underworld sect came the second time, they had already suppressed the refined corpse, but the refined corpse suddenly showed great power. It could be seen that these refined corpses were not ownerless, but controlled by someone. Back then, only Qi Yun and Chen Ji had explored the secret realm. Qi Yun's soul and body were all in his spiritual pearl space. Before he deliberately revealed that there was Yin Qi near the Mirror Lake Oasis, the only people who knew about the secret realm were himself and Chen Ji. The person controlling these refined corpses could only be Chen Ji. As for the Nether sect's cultivators who went underground, they never came out again. There were two possibilities. The first was that Chen Ji had set up a trap at the entrance of the secret realm to kill everyone. He had explored the secret realm twice, and it was very easy to set up an ambush at the entrance of the secret realm. However, the people of the Nether sect were not fools. They would not rush in like a swarm of bees. Even if there was a formation, it would not kill everyone. The Nether sect sent people to search for the secret realm, so how could they not send a formation master? From Qi Yun's memory, he knew that Chen Ji did not specialize in formations. Therefore, the possibility of Chen Ji using a formation to kill the cultivators of the Nether sect was not high. The other possibility was that there was at least a third stage refined corpse moving underground. Generally, refined corpses would fall into a deep sleep after their masters died. As long as there was no external interference, they would continue to sleep. Naturally refined corpses would move according to their own habits. If there was a third stage naturally refined corpse inside, then Qi Yun and Chen Ji would have died in the secret realm. None of the cultivators of the Nether sect who went underground came out alive. They should have all been killed after entering the secret realm. Therefore, even if there was a third stage refined corpse moving in the secret realm, it would definitely not be a natural refined corpse. Third stage refined corpses could not fly, and they were not as agile as cultivators. However, they were able to kill over a dozen late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators. This meant that there was more than one third stage refined corpse in the secret realm. Since there was more than one third stage refined corpse, there were no Violet Palace realm cultivators or third stage demonic beasts around the treasured Mirror Lake. However, Chen Ji did not release them to kill the cultivators of the treasured Mirror Lake to obtain materials for refining corpses. The biggest possibility was that he couldn't control the third stage refined corpse and he was afraid that it would rebel against him. From this, it could be seen that Chen Ji's cultivation was only at the pinnacle of the Foundation establishment realm. Now, Wang Daoyuan was completely relieved. Even though he might not be able to defeat Chen Ji, who was at the peak of the foundational level, at least he wouldn't be killed so easily. As for the third stage refined corpses, Chen Ji could not control them well. If he released them, who knew who they would attack? As long as he did not enter the secret realm, there was no need for him to worry about the third stage refined corpses. Even if Chen Ji released the third stage refined corpse, he could use the flying kite to escape. What could a refined corpse that could not fly do to him? There was no need for him to worry about Chen Ji's cultivation. After all, he hadn't been able to establish his Violet Palace for so many years. Right now, he had to think about how to lure Chen Ji out. After all, he couldn't keep wasting time here. After figuring everything out, Wang Daoyuan quickly finished his meal. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan suddenly sensed a slight spiritual sense fluctuation coming from the third floor to the innkeeper's ear. It was a spiritual sense transmission and he could tell that the spiritual sense of the person who sent it was slightly weaker than him. However, it was limited and the person should be at the pinnacle of the Foundation establishment realm. Although Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense was strong, it wasn't strong enough to intercept a spiritual sense transmission. The Mirror Lake Inn had 3 floors. The first floor was empty, the second floor was private rooms, and the third floor was not for guests. Since he wanted to gather information, the first floor was naturally the most suitable place for him to sit. Wang Daoyuan shouted for the bill and the innkeeper personally came over. The innkeeper was at the 5th stage of the Foundation establishment realm. He came to the table and said with a smile, "Daoyu, are you satisfied with the food?" Wang Daoyuan didn't say anything and only nodded. The innkeeper continued, "These dishes cost a total of 1,000 spirit stones." Wang Daoyuan said with a smile, "Your master is really interesting. When I first arrived here, Daoyu gave me 1,000 spirit stones and your master insisted on taking them back. Forget it, it's only 1,000 spirit stones. I can kill anyone for more than that. Since your master wants them, then take them." Then, he took out 10 mid-grade spirit stones from his storage pouch and handed them to the innkeeper before leaving the inn. In a room on the 3rd floor, there were 2 cultivators, one with a long beard and the other with a short beard. The short-beard cultivator said with a smile, "This person is really sharp. He can even detect the fluctuations of a spiritual sense transmission. If his spiritual sense cultivation was higher, he might be able to intercept the contents of the spiritual sense transmission. What do you think of this person?" The long-bearded old man replied, "This person's spiritual power has an extremely strong yin qi." He also inquired about the corpse refinement more than 10 years ago. Maybe he's also aiming for that place. This person isn't someone who haggles over minor matters. He's also straightforward and upright in his actions. He's an excellent partner. If he continues to stay here, we can try to rope him in. The short-bearded cultivator nodded and said, "We still have to test him. Maybe this person is in cahoots with the previous group. If that's the case, we'll be asking a tiger for its skin. Moreover, this person's temperament really doesn't seem like a rogue cultivator. Coupled with his brilliant methods, he might be a direct disciple of some great power. It was risky to work with such a person. He's not weak, but if we fall underground, we'll be hunted down by the power behind him. Chapter 303. Wang Daoyuan left Mirror Lake Restaurant and flew towards Nanshan Mountain. Because there was no reliable place to live in the market, most of the rogue cultivators opened their cave abodes in Nanshan Mountain Yin and Beiyuan Mountain Sunday. His character in Mirror Lake Oasis was that of a heretic cultivator, and his spiritual power carried dense yin qi. Such a cultivator naturally didn't like sunlight, so it was unreasonable for him to live in Beiyuan Mountain Sunday. There were fewer cave abodes in Nanshan Mountain Yin than Beiyuan Mountain Sunday. Most of the cultivators in Mirror Lake didn't have a tomorrow. Therefore, there were many cave abodes in the mountain. Cave abodes with people were naturally protected by formations, and cave abodes without formations were naturally uninhabited. Wang Daoyuan found an abandoned cave abode in Nanshan Mountain Yin. The location of the cave abode was quite good, halfway up the mountain. There was a huge protruding rock outside the cave abode's entrance, like a broken bridge, extending to the north for more than 30 meters. The surface of the rock was flat, and the entrance of the cave abode formed a platform that was more than 30 meters long and 40 to 50 meters wide. This cave abode didn't have any formations protecting it, so it was obviously uninhabited. After entering the cave abode, it was very simple inside, except for a stone couch, there was nothing else. There were defensive formation patterns on the cave abode's entrance and walls, but they were already damaged. This array pattern was also only Tier 2 high-grade standard. Wang Daoyuan spent half a day's effort and finished repairing it. There was only one spirit vein in Mirror Lake Oasis, and it was at the bottom of Mirror Lake. Because of the terrain, spiritual qi couldn't easily spread out, and between the two mountains, there was still a lot of spiritual qi. However, the drifting spiritual qi couldn't directly provide spiritual power for the formation. Therefore, the cave abode's defensive formation could only be provided with spiritual power by spirit stones. In the process of repairing the formation, he found that the formation patterns on the walls weren't damaged by the passage of time, but by sword marks, which showed that there was a fierce battle here. After he finished repairing all the formation patterns, he carefully observed the entire formation, and found that there was a problem with the formation, and there was an obvious loophole. After the formation was activated, one could enter the cave abode from the outside without destroying the formation. This formation seemed to be a trap. After someone lived in the cave abode, the person who set up the formation could sneak in and attack at any time. No wonder there was no damage on the door of the cave, but there were many sword marks inside the cave. It seemed that the last unlucky person who lived in this cave had been killed by someone through a loophole in the array formation. He reckoned that this matter had caused quite a ruckus. After that, the array formation of this immortal cave had not been repaired. No wonder no one lived in such a good cave. It wasn't easy for others to set up this trap, so it would be a pity to make up for it just like that. This formation pattern looked like it was only a few decades old. The person who set the trap back then might still be alive, and it was a good opportunity to use this trap to lure him out. He did not fix the flaws in the array formation. Instead, he set it up inside. Once someone entered, he could close the gap in the formation at any time, making it impossible for anyone to leave. In order to prevent the enemy from sending too many people, he would fail miserably at such an easy task. He was still inside the cave abode, setting up the gold fiend soul-severing array with a disc array. He had witnessed the power of this formation back when he was resisting the beast tide. He had also taken the time to refine this formation disc. He had 4 tiger fiend swords and many tiger claw blades. Actually, it was better to use Dharma artifacts to hold down the array. However, even if he did not connect it to the spirit vein, it would take at least 10 days to half a month to set up a small array. The fish he wanted to catch could come at any time. There was no time to slowly set up the array. He placed the disc array in a specific position and placed a mid-grade spirit stone on it. He activated the disc array to absorb the spirit chi in the mid-grade spirit stone and store it in the disc array. After the disc array finished absorbing the energy, he replaced it with a new mid-grade spirit stone. Finally, he simply hid the disc array. After the Gold Fiend Soul Severing Array was set up, he installed a mid-grade second-grade spirit stone in the original array formation of the cave abode and activated it. For Foundation Establishment cultivators, sleep was no longer a necessity. Meditation could completely replace sleep. Wang Daoyuan also meditated at the core of the array formation, waiting for the fish to take the bait. 3 days later, at night, a soft sound came from outside the cave abode. He used his spirit sense to explore outside and saw 6 cultivators outside. They were all late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators. The leader was a 9th-level Foundation Establishment cultivator, not far from peak Foundation Establishment. He was using his spirit sense to send a message to the others. After a few breaths, the 9th-level Foundation Establishment cultivator came to the entrance of the cave abode and touched a few array patterns on the door. Then, the array patterns on the door were all closed. He led the other 5 people into the cave, and the last person closed the door behind him. Seeing Wang Daoyuan meditating, he mocked, "I didn't expect Dao Yu to be an array master. Unfortunately, you're not skilled enough to see through my backup plan. This cave abode has been abandoned for decades. I didn't expect to catch a big fish. Hand over your cultivation technique and escape technique obediently and I'll spare your life." Wang Daoyuan revealed a contemptuous smile. Then, with a move of his spirit sense, the array patterns on the door of the cave abode were instantly activated. The person closest to the door among the 6 tried to open it but failed. He took out his sword and attacked the door. The array patterns only trembled a few times. It would take at least half an hour to completely break it. Wang Daoyuan smiled. "You guys are really patient. You wasted 3 days of my time and only came to die now." The 9th-level Foundation Establishment cultivator said in disdain, "Although you're strong and I'm not your match in a one-on-one fight, there are 6 of us. I don't believe that you can defeat the 6 of us." Wang Daoyuan smiled and did not reply. He activated the Gold Malevolent Soul Severing formation and a malevolent aura filled the entire cave abode. With the cave abode sealed, the 6 of them had no way out and were panicking. At this moment, the malevolent aura of the Gold Malevolent Soul Severing formation was released and affected their minds. 3 of the 7th-level Foundation Establishment cultivators were stunned on the spot. The other 3 were also momentarily dazed. Wang Daoyuan did not hesitate and immediately summoned the soul-destroying bell. At this moment, he was already at Foundation Establishment Level 8 and his spirit sense surpassed that of ordinary peak Foundation Establishment cultivators. He could unleash the full power of the soul-destroying bell. The cave abode was only so big and the 6 of them were very close to the soul-destroying bell. Coupled with the rebound effect of the cave abode's walls, they were repeatedly ravaged by the sound wave attacks. After the sound of the bell dissipated, the 6 of them rolled their eyes. Other than the leader being strong and having his soul damaged, there were no other fatal injuries. The other 5 had their souls dissipated from the shock and their organs were severely damaged. They were bleeding from their 7 orifices and did not seem like they would survive. It was not suitable to refine clones for these heavily injured and dying cultivators. It was too troublesome to treat their injuries. His goal was to refine clones, not to open a charity hall. Who cared about their lives? If they were not suitable to be refined into clones, there would naturally be more suitable ones and he could just capture other cultivators. Zhao Baogua and Shadow Fox had already died of old age and he was left with 4 clones as well as Qi Yun who did not have a split soul. After replacing Wu Yi's split soul, the 4 split souls only accounted for 4% of his soul. He could still have 6 more clones. However, He was in a dangerous place right now and it was not suitable for him to split his soul. Among the 4 clones, there was Liang Zixing, a qi refinement cultivator. There was not much use for him to continue keeping him. He pulled out the split soul from his sea of consciousness and used the soul-splitting blade to invade the 9th-level Foundation Establishment Cultivator's sea of consciousness. In the 9th-level Foundation Establishment Cultivator's sea of consciousness, his soul was in a state of dissipation. With a light touch of the soul-splitting blade, the soul was about to dissipate. Wang Daoyuan immediately poured his split soul into the sea of consciousness. The soul-splitting blade turned into the power of his spiritual sense and reformed the soul. Then, he put the clone into the space of the spirit bead. The other 5 people were already dead and there was no point in keeping them. After searching the bodies, he tied their necks with a rope and hung them on the protruding rock outside the cave abode. Chapter 304. As an evil cultivator, he couldn't be too merciful. He couldn't spare anyone who deserved to be killed. He could also use the lives of these itinerant cultivators as a warning to those who had designs on him. Apart from wanting to end the battle quickly, he also wanted to lure the snake out of its hole by using the soul-extinguishing bell this time. He used the soul-extinguishing bell in the cave abode and was blocked by the door, so it couldn't reach the market more than 50 kilometers away. However, it was still very likely that the surrounding cave abodes could hear it. Everything in the world was no longer a secret as long as there was a second person who knew about it. As long as someone other than him heard the bell, it would definitely spread. It would take him a long time to find Shenji, so it was better to lure him out. After a few hours, the new avatar and divided soul had finished fusing. His name was Lu Zong, and he was the person who set up the trap in the cave abode. Lu Zong was originally from Shannon, but he was not a cultivator from Zhao country but Wei country. Wei country was in the west of Zhao country and was far weaker than Zhao country in the past. When the Zhao royal family was still around, they often attacked Wei country. If not for the beast tide that broke out in the Heavenly/Mountain Range and Huiyan Mountain many times and restrained Zhao country's energy, Wei country would have been destroyed long ago. After the Zhao royal family was destroyed, the higher-ups of the 3 major sects also suffered heavy losses. So far, the high-end combat power of the 3 major sects was much weaker than that of Wei country. Among the more than 10 large and small countries in Beiyuan Xiuxian, only Zhao country and Qin country maintained the unification of the royal family. In the other countries, the royal family was either long gone or just one of the major forces. It was the same for Wei country. When the royal family of Zhao country was still around, they seized all the strongholds at the border. Even if Zhao country was not strong now, the surrounding countries could only take back some of the territory at the edge and couldn't attack Zhao country. However, Zhao country was no longer as powerful as before, but they still occupied the strongholds at the border. The forces of Wei country were always under the threat of Zhao country. The forces of Wei country naturally wanted to take back those strongholds, but Wei country was also in a state of disunity. Only the forces near the border wanted to attack Zhao country. There was no benefit for the other forces to attack Zhao country, so they naturally wouldn't help. They were also worried that the forces near the border would take back their territory and become stronger. Not only did they not help, but they also kept hindering them. Therefore, there were no major battles at the borders of Zhao and Wei. Instead, there were many small skirmishes. Lu Zong was originally a cultivator from a family clan near the Cold River Pass at the border of Zhao and Wei. When the Wei nation attacked the Cold River Pass, they did not want to lose too many of their own disciples. Therefore, they tried their best to recruit affiliated family clans. Most of the Lu Zong family's experts had died in battle. If they continued to maintain the family's disciples would all be finished sooner or later. In order to preserve a little bit of their lineage, the remaining cultivators of the Lu clan all dispersed and went to various places to become rogue cultivators. At that time, Lu Zong was only a qi refinement cultivator and did not carry the inheritance of the Lu family. Later on, he succeeded in building his foundation without the help of a foundation-building pill. The Wei nation forces wantonly captured itinerant cultivators as cannon fodder. These rogue cultivators fled to other places, and many of them fled into Mount Huiyan. Mount Huiyan, near the Frigid River Pass, was the lair of the demonic beasts. The cultivators who fled to Mount Huiyan had a slim chance of survival. Lu Fang was very lucky. When she used the Earth Escape Talisman to escape, she encountered an underground river. She followed the river to the north and finally escaped to the north of the mountain. In order to survive, he had killed many people and hunted many monsters. There were not many places in Shanbei that could accommodate him. After many years, he finally arrived at Treasure Mirror Lake. He had obtained an upper-grade Rank 2 array inheritance and became a Rank 2 array master with his good talent. Most array masters knew some refining techniques. Lu Fang's refining skills were not high and were only at the upper-grade Rank 1 level. There was no value in nurturing him at all. It was not easy to earn spirit stones from array masters. That was why he came up with such a plan to use the cave abode to set up a trap and lure people in before killing them and robbing them. Lu Fang's cultivation method and magic art were all very ordinary things. Over the years, the Immortal's cave's traps could not deceive people. She did not have many spirit stones in her hands. Even her magic weapon was only a second-tier high-grade long sword. The quality of the sword was not good and was inferior to the tiger claw blade. Wang Daoyuan could not use it at all. The other 5 cultivators, including the cultivator that he killed when he first arrived at the market, did not have anything good either. He only found some useless jade slips, 6 flying swords, and more than 40,000 spirit stones in the 6 storage bags. Lu Fang's value was not great as his refining skills were too low. An array master could only help refine a few array discs in the space of the spiritual pearl. However, his cultivation was not low and he could blend in with the blood shadow. He could learn the inheritance of the Gui Yuan sword sect in the space and increase his battle strength. After joining the blood shadow, he could try to make Yulang a mere figurehead or fight to become a manager himself. After Wang Daoyuan meditated for a long time in the cave abode, a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator came to greet him. That person said, "Senior, my master has something to discuss with you. Please come to the Mirror Lake restaurant for a chat." Wang Daoyuan sneered, "What does your master have to do with me? I don't have anything important to discuss with your master. Scram, if you disturb my cultivation again, the 5 outside will be your examples." There were still 5 late-stage foundation establishment cultivators' corpses hanging on the rock at the entrance of the cave abode. He was only a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, how could he not kill them? He did not dare to say anything else and left with his tail between his legs. He arrived at the Mirror Lake restaurant and reported to the long-bearded and short-bearded cultivators. The long-bearded cultivator laughed, "This Dao Yu is quite capable." 6 people went to ambush him and 5 of them were hung up as a warning to others. Lu Zong is still missing. Our informants also did not see Lu Zong come out. He was most likely beaten to a pulp. Our informants reported that not long after the 6 of them went in, they heard the sound of a bell. After half a cup of tea's time, the 5 of them were hung on the rock. He might have a sound wave attack magic tool. His methods are far above yours and mine, so we should try to rope him in. It's a pity that this person is very wary of us and did not accept our invitation. The short-bearded cultivator said, as soon as he arrived at the Mirror Lake Oasis, he came looking for trouble twice and killed 7 people. It would be strange if he wasn't wary. We were too hasty in inviting him. He just finished killing people, so we invited him and said that we have something to discuss. No matter how you look at it, it seems like we sent people to assassinate him and after they failed, we wanted to lure him in and kill him. Our plan is not urgent and we can slowly rope him in. Let's find an excuse to meet him and dispel his wariness before we talk about other things. The long-bearded cultivator nodded and said, let's do it this way then. This person's cultivation techniques, spells and magic tools are all good. I haven't seen him buy anything in the market either. It can be seen that he has very high standards. It just so happens that there's going to be a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator exchange in a while. Let's take out some good stuff and invite him in the name of the exchange. 2 months later, the long-bearded and short-bearded cultivators personally came to the door of Wang Daoyuan's cave abode. The long-bearded cultivator shouted, I, Ji Cheng, and my younger brother, Ji Yu, have come to invite Dao Yu to participate in the late-stage foundation establishment cultivator exchange. I wonder if Dao Yu is willing to entertain us two brothers. Wang Daoyuan scanned with his spiritual sense and discovered that the two of them were both peak foundation establishment cultivators. The strength of peak foundation establishment cultivators was not easy to estimate. Some were not much different from foundation establishment level 9, while some were far stronger. Some like Shi Zhenbang could even exchange 2 blows with Zifu realm cultivators. Therefore, early-stage and mid-stage foundation establishment cultivators would respectfully address peak foundation establishment cultivators as seniors when they met them. If he did not entertain the 2 peak foundation establishment cultivators who had personally come to invite him, he would be offending them. If he really became enemies with these 2 brothers, he did not even have the confidence to win against one of them with his strength, let alone 2 brothers. He still had to deal with Chen Ji. If he could avoid offending these 2, he would try his best not to. Wang Daoyuan closed the cave abode's defensive formation and said, Dao Yu has come to visit. Please forgive me for not coming out to welcome you. Chapter 305. The 2 people walked into the abode. Wang Daoyuan did not get up to welcome but sat beside the gold fiend soul severing formation's core array disk, ready to activate the array formation at any time. With the protection of the array formation, even if these 2 people made a move against him, he could handle it too. The 2 brothers were both peak foundation establishment realm cultivations. Their divine senses were not weak either. They could naturally discover the array disk that Wang Daoyuan casually concealed. Ji Qing clasped his hands and said, Dao Yu came to Treasure Mirror Lake Oasis for so long, but we still haven't asked for Dao Yu's name. Wang Daoyuan clasped his hands and said, this one is Wu Chuan. Greetings to the 2 Dao Yu. Ji Yu smiled and said, Wu Dao Yu has such strength at Foundation Establishment Realm 8th level cultivation. I presume that opening up the Purple Palace isn't a hard thing either. Looking at the arrangement of this abode, Dao Yu is also an array master? Wang Daoyuan answered, this Wu indeed knows a little about the Dao of array formations. Ji Qing clasped his hands and said, I wonder if Wu Dao Yu has dabbled in artifact refinement before? Wang Daoyuan countered with a question, could it be that there are still array masters who don't know artifact refinement? Although this Wu's artifact refinement Dao is inferior to array formations, I can also barely enter Tier 2 standard. Ji Qing gave his younger brother a glance with a smile and said, then I have to congratulate Wu Dao Yu. We itinerant cultivators lack complete inheritances. Therefore, itinerant cultivators who major in alchemy, artifact, and talisman, these 3 paths, are very few. In the past late-stage foundation establishment cultivator exchange meetings, array discs, magic artifacts, medicinal pills, spirit talismans, and so on are all extremely popular. Each exchange meeting, there will be quite a number of good artifact refinement materials. There are even quite a number of all kinds of incomplete Tier 3 inheritances. If Dao Yu is interested, you can take out array discs, magic artifacts, and so on to exchange for artifact refinement materials and so on. Wang Daoyuan's face revealed a look of interest and said, looks like I have to go to this exchange meeting. Ji Yu smiled and said, since Dao Yu is interested in participating, us two brothers' trip this time isn't in vain. In 2 months, the exchange meeting will be held on the 3rd floor of the Mirror Lake Inn. Daoyu, please come. Goodbye. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands and said, I will definitely be there on time. I won't see you off. During these 2 months, Wang Daoyuan didn't go out. Instead, he refined several artifacts. His avatar Lu Zong also refined some array discs inside the space. He could also take out some pills and talismans to exchange, but he didn't need to refine any more. In the past few years, he hadn't fought much, so he hadn't used up any talismans, and he had only used up some soul-solidifying pills. In order to maintain his level, he had to refine a furnace of pills and 1 or 2 talismans every 4 or 5 days. He still had a lot of stock in his space. After reaching the foundation establishment stage, cultivators would be able to fly on their swords, and offensive talismans would no longer be of much use. Level 2 talismans were mainly defensive talismans and talismans with special effects. He still had a total of more than 1,000 high-grade Tier 2 defensive and escape talismans, as well as over 1,000 essence condensing pills, detoxification pills, and soul-strengthening pills. He didn't need the rejuvenation pill himself, so he only refined a few, only 100 or 200 of them. If he sold all these things, he would get hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. Of course, he didn't dare to take them all out. Otherwise, he would definitely be attacked by a group. It would be good to exchange them for some valuable spiritual items or incomplete level 3 inheritances. For the pill, artifact, and talisman array inheritances, take the artifact refinement inheritances as an example. Most inheritances had the same foundation, but different inheritances focused on different things. In a brilliant inheritance, there would be a unique Dharma artifact. Even if there were only 1 or 2 unique Dharma artifact refinement methods in the inheritance, they would still be of great value. After all, it was too difficult to research a new Dharma artifact himself. Bai Xing's avatar had been busy for 20 years and only improved the crane feather boat. With Wang Daoyuan's guidance, the improved flying kite still had a huge flaw. If he were to research a Dharma artifact from scratch, it would take at least 80 to 100 years. To artifact refinement masters, the refinement methods of special Dharma artifacts were extremely precious. Apart from that, it was the same for pill, talisman, and array Dao. There were many basic things, and slightly special ones were very difficult to obtain. If he wanted to develop pill recipes, talismans, and array formations himself, he would have to try countless times. Although pill, talisman, and array Dao were important, they couldn't compare to cultivation. Naturally, Wang Daoyuan couldn't spend so much effort to research these things. His avatar's soul was injured and his comprehension was extremely low. It was still alright to learn step by step. At most, he would come up with new ideas and let them put them into practice. The possibility of relying on his avatar to come up with new tricks was too low. Therefore, it was also very valuable to be able to obtain some incomplete inheritances. 2 months had passed and the trade meet was about to begin. He put away the gold fiend soul severing array in his cave abode and activated the defensive array formation. Then, he left his cave abode and headed to the Mirror Lake restaurant. When he arrived at the restaurant, he displayed his foundation establishment level 8 spirit energy waves. The manager asked the Qi refinement cultivator to bring him to the door of the 3rd floor. Wang Daoyuan entered the door and saw that the layout inside was a little like a classroom in his previous life. The space inside the room was long from north to south and narrow from east to west. At the northernmost end was a platform that was more than a foot tall. In the middle of the platform was a table that resembled a lectern. Where the table should be, there were prayer mats. When he entered the door, there were already 30 to 40 people in the room. Seeing him enter, the brothers Ji Cheng and Ji Yu cupped their fists and said, "Wu Daoyu is here. Please take a seat." With that, they led him to the front row and sat with the other Peak Foundation establishment cultivators. The Peak Foundation establishment cultivators of the Mirror Lake Oasis all had a few subordinates. Naturally, they had heard of Wang Daoyuan's situation. Knowing that his strength was comparable to Peak Foundation establishment cultivators, they had no objections. On the other hand, the other Foundation establishment level 8 and level 9 cultivators were somewhat unhappy and asked each other about Wang Daoyuan's identity. When they learned that he had occupied the trap cave abode and killed 6 late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators alone, they didn't say anything. The corpses of the 5 late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators were still hanging on the boulder in front of the cave abode. No one wanted to provoke him. After all, this person had killed Foundation establishment level 9 cultivators in broad daylight. Apart from those Peak Foundation establishment cultivators, no one was confident that they could withstand his sword. Since the Peak Foundation establishment cultivators didn't say anything, the others naturally didn't dare to court death. After waiting for about 2 hours, there were a total of more than 80 people present. Apart from the Peak Foundation establishment cultivators, most people didn't show their faces. Wang Daoyuan couldn't wait for Chen Ji to come to him, so he didn't hide. Ji Qing stood on the stage and said, "Everyone, Dao Yu is almost here. The exchange meeting is held once every 10 years. This time, there are many acquaintances and strangers, so I'll go over the rules again. Everyone, Dao Yu is free to go on stage and show what you want to exchange. You can exchange anything you want. As long as there's no conflict here, everything else is up to you." With that, he walked down the stage. Wang Daoyuan's goal was to exchange for some materials and inheritances. The only things he could take out were common magic artifacts. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to go on stage. A 7th-stage Foundation establishment cultivator took the lead and walked to the front of the stage. He took out a turtle shell that was more than 30 feet long and said, "This is the shell of a 2nd-stage high-grade demon beast, the thick earth spirit turtle. It was killed not long ago and is very well preserved. I want to exchange it for a defensive magic artifact. It's best if it's of the metal attribute. I can also accept non-elemental ones. If this turtle shell was taken apart, it would be enough to refine 5 2nd-stage high-grade shields. Just the materials alone could be sold for 7,000 to 8,000 spirit stones." No one present had any intention of exchanging it. After all, refining materials were not rare. Wang Daoyuan took out a star steel shield and asked, "Will this do?" The Wang family had a mine of star steel. When he was refining the flying boat, his 12th uncle had prepared a lot for him. Because star steel could be recycled and reused, he didn't use much. Now, he still had a few hundred kilograms of it in his space. This shield was refined from the leftover materials from refining the flying boat's core when he opened his shop in Guiyan Market. If he sold it in Guiyan Market, it would be worth about 4,000 to 5,000 spirit stones. It was a big profit to exchange it for the turtle shell. However, the Mirror Treasure Oasis was full of itinerant cultivators. There weren't many cultivators who were proficient in refining magic artifacts. The price of magic artifacts was very high. In the eyes of everyone, the turtle shell and the shield were of similar value. Chapter 306. The 7th-level Foundation establishment cultivator on the stage scanned the shield with his divine sense and nodded. This shield was refined with a brilliant technique, there are no obvious flaws. Exchanging the turtle shell for this shield, I've made quite a profit. Then, he walked down the stage and handed the turtle shell to Wang Daoyuan before taking the shield. Next, the 2nd cultivator went on stage. He brought several supplementary herbs for the purple rhyme pill. Wang Daoyuan had obtained the purple rhyme pill's main ingredient, the purple rhyme dragon ginseng, but he didn't have all the supplementary herbs. He only cleared an acre of spiritual land to plant the materials for the rejuvenation pill and planted the purple rime dragon ginseng. The purple rime pill was a third-grade mid-grade pill. His current alchemy skills were only at second-grade high-grade, so he couldn't refine it. He only issued a reward in his family for the help of his family's disciples to find the missing supplementary herbs and the materials for the meridian shielding pill. He didn't expect to find a supplementary herb here. It seemed that the supplementary herb wasn't completely dead yet. If he planted it near the life spiritual fire, it could still be saved. This cultivator asked for 10 essence condensing pills, so Wang Daoyuan naturally bought it. Then, more than 10 cultivators brought things on stage, but they weren't of much value. Wang Daoyuan had no use for them, so he didn't bid. Most of them were taken by other cultivators, but there were a few that he couldn't exchange. After an hour, a 9th-level foundation establishment cultivator walked on stage with a jade box in his hand. The jade box was engraved with complicated restrictions. It was obvious that it wasn't an ordinary item. The things inside couldn't leak any aura. Seeing this person's solemn appearance, everyone became interested. He put the jade box on the table and undid the restrictions on the box. After half a cup of tea's time, he finally undid all the restrictions. When the box was finally opened, everyone stood up and stared at the jade box. He opened the jade box and saw a piece of jade the size of an adult's thumb. This piece of jade was enshrouded in a layer of mist. After dispelling the mist, he found that the jade was almost completely transparent. After the mist was dispelled, it quickly reappeared. Apart from that, this piece of jade didn't have anything special. It didn't even have a trace of spiritual power. Wang Daoyuan had never seen such a spiritual material before, so he couldn't figure out what it was. Everyone present was also a little confused, but the few Peak Foundation establishment cultivators were more knowledgeable. Ji Cheng pondered for a moment and asked, "Could this be profound ice jade marrow?" The cultivator on the stage nodded and said, "Ji Daoyu is indeed experienced and knowledgeable. This is indeed profound ice jade essence." Everyone was in an uproar. This was a legendary spiritual item. Profound ice chalcedony was born from profound ice. Therefore, profound ice was needed in order to produce profound ice chalcedony. Profound ice alone was a mid-grade or high-grade tier 2 material. Although it was called ice, it had undergone a qualitative change. Even if it was placed in a furnace, it would not melt. Such spirit materials could only be found in extremely cold places. This place of extreme cold could be the peak of an extremely high snow mountain, or it could be an underground cold spring. However, both of these were relatively rare. Most of the mysterious ice in Beiyuan Xiaofan came from the Arctic ice field. That place was the territory of the demon race. No humans lived there permanently at all. Occasionally, some cultivators would go to the Arctic ice field to explore. The Netherworld sect traded with the demon race north of the mountain. One of the demon race's important goods was profound ice. Profound ice was already relatively rare, let alone the profound ice jade marrow that could only be born after thousands of years of nurturing in profound ice. Profound ice jade marrow contained massive amounts of ice attribute spiritual energy, but it also virtually did not leak out. Apart from a layer of thin mist on the exterior, it did not look to have any outstanding aspects. Wang Daoyuan had only heard of this thing before, but had never seen it before. Hence, he did not recognize it. Ji Yu opened his mouth once more and said, "This profound ice jade marrow is extremely rare. At least a profound ice mountain is needed to have a possibility of nurturing it. Even the demon race of the Arctic ice field wanting to obtain profound ice jade marrow is also extremely difficult. How did you obtain it?" The owner of the profound ice jade marrow answered, "Because my soul was damaged, I searched everywhere for spiritual items to recover soul injuries. I once made a trip to the Arctic ice field. By chance, I obtained this piece of profound ice jade marrow. Jiyu nodded and said, I want to personally examine the authenticity of this item. The people on the stage did not have objections either. Jiyu asked, everyone present, Dao Yu, is there a fire attribute cultivator? Facing this profound ice jade marrow, just casually casting a fire attribute spell will do. An 8th level foundation establishment cultivator stood up and condensed a flaming longsword, hacking towards the profound ice jade marrow. The originally ordinary profound ice jade marrow suddenly released a large amount of cold mist, enveloping the flaming longsword. The cultivator who cast the flaming longsword rapidly fled. The cold mist disappeared, only to see the flaming longsword directly frozen into an ice sculpture. This kind of situation was that the fire attribute spiritual energy had not had time to dissipate and was directly frozen by the ice attribute spiritual energy. Only extremely powerful ice attribute spiritual energy dealing with mediocre fire attribute spiritual energy would this kind of situation occur. Once the outer layer of ice melted, the fire attribute spiritual energy would also immediately dissipate. Ji Cheng walked forward and used his hand to lightly knock on the ice sculpture. The ice sculpture directly broke into several pieces, and the fire attribute spiritual energy also rapidly dissipated. Soon after, the ice on the ground also turned into an icy mist, returning to the profound ice jade marrow. Jiyu nodded and said, it is indeed profound ice jade marrow without a doubt. Unfortunately, it is only a 1,000-year-old profound ice jade marrow, and only a 3rd-grade low-grade one. Hearing this, the others were also somewhat disappointed. Even if the profound ice jade marrow was not refined into a magic tool and was only worn on the body, it could also effectively suppress inner demons and prevent chi deviation. The purple mansion inner demon tribulation of an ordinary cultivator was not very dangerous, but if the person who opened up the purple mansion had inner demons, then the purple mansion inner demon tribulation would be an extremely dangerous life and death juncture. Among the rogue cultivators, who could cultivate to the point of opening up the purple mansion, which one of them did not have hands stained with blood? Unless they could commit crimes and still have a clear conscience. Otherwise, they would more or less have inner demons. If there was a 3rd-grade mid-grade profound ice jade marrow suppressing it, when opening up the purple mansion, it could be guaranteed that one would not be injured by the inner demon tribulation. This 3rd-grade low-grade profound ice jade marrow still had its effects, but it was much weaker and could not guarantee its safety. Even so, this piece of profound ice jade marrow was still very valuable. If it could be sold to an ice attribute cultivator, it wouldn't be difficult to sell it for 300,000 to 400,000 spirit stones. Everyone was eagerly watching, waiting for the cultivator on the stage to state the conditions of the exchange. The cultivator on the stage sighed and said, I already said that I obtained this profound ice jade marrow by chance because my soul was injured. Although this profound ice jade marrow is powerful, it is unfortunately unable to heal my soul. I wish to use this profound ice jade marrow to exchange for a spiritual item that can heal soul injuries. A Peak Foundation establishment cultivator sighed and said, a spiritual item that can heal soul injuries is too difficult to find and is also extremely precious. Even if a Violet Palace Realm cultivator were to see it, they would not be able to resist fighting for it. Even if someone were to obtain it, they would view it as a treasure and would not easily exchange it. In my opinion, Dao Yu should make another request. To put it bluntly, since Dao Yu has revealed his wealth, it would be better to exchange it. Otherwise, Dao Yu will not be able to leave the Mirror Lake Oasis alive. Hearing this, the owner of the profound ice jade marrow looked up to the sky and sighed. He originally did not have any hope of recovering his soul injuries, but he was still somewhat unwilling. He came to this exchange meeting mentally prepared himself. It would be best if he could obtain a spiritual item that could heal his soul injuries, but if not, he would give up on the profound ice jade marrow and save his life. When the Peak Foundation establishment cultivator saw that he intended to give up on the spiritual item that could heal his soul, he struck while the iron was hot and said, Dao Yu, make a simple request. Just as the cultivator on the stage was about to speak, Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, "Wait." Chapter 307. The Peak Foundation establishment cultivator looked at Wang Daoyuan with ill intentions, but Wang Daoyuan didn't mind. The owner of the profound ice jade essence regained her hope and asked, "Could it be that Dao Yu has a spirit item that can heal soul injuries?" Wang Daoyuan asked, "How serious are your soul injuries?" "I have the seeds of the inky jade lotus, but there aren't many of them. If Daoyu's soul is missing too much, I can't do anything about it." He was overjoyed and said, "My soul isn't missing, but I was injured by a divine sense attack, and the injury is very serious. But with the inky jade lotus, a spirit medicine that can even heal a missing soul, my injury is nothing. 2 seeds are enough, 3 will definitely be enough." Wang Daoyuan took out 3 inky jade lotus seeds and said with a smile, "What a coincidence, I just happen to have 3. How about exchanging them for your profound ice jade essence?" The cultivator immediately ran down from the stage and gave the profound ice jade essence to Wang Daoyuan, took the lotus seeds, and turned to leave. Wang Daoyuan said with a smile, "I have a precious treasure. If I go out like this, I might die on the streets. I can't make a move here." He suddenly understood and stuffed the 3 lotus seeds into his mouth. After swallowing them, he began to refine them. Once the lotus seeds were swallowed, it would be useless even if he killed someone to take the lotus seeds. The others also gave up on the idea of snatching them. But the Peak Foundation establishment cultivator who wanted the profound ice jade essence laughed with ill intentions. "Wu Daoyu is quite insightful when looking at other people's matters. Why didn't you consider yourself? You have a precious treasure, aren't you afraid of dying on the streets?" Wang Daoyuan said with disdain, "When I was still in the Qi refinement stage, I once saw a Peak Foundation establishment senior who could exchange a blow with a Zifu realm cultivator and retreat unscathed. That Zifu realm cultivator didn't just establish his Zifu, but was a veteran Zifu realm cultivator. If Dao Yu has the ability, I will give you the profound ice jade essence with both hands. Without this ability, an ordinary 9th level foundation establishment cultivator wouldn't be able to take a single strike from me. I wonder how many strikes Dao Yu can take." The foundation establishment cultivator's expression changed, and he said coldly, "Wu Daoyu, you sure talk big." Wang Daoyuan snorted and said, "I've only been here for a few months, and I've spent most of my time in my abode. I've already killed 7 late-stage foundation establishment cultivators, so I don't mind killing one more Peak Foundation establishment cultivator. Right now, there are still 5 corpses hanging at the entrance of my immortal cave. It would be a waste to continue hanging them there." This Wu has no interest in refining tools from human bones, but this interest can be cultivated. Since his persona was that of an arrogant evil cultivator, he would be arrogant to the end. Rogue cultivators were like that. The more you cowered, the more they bullied you. If you were arrogant, he really wouldn't dare to touch you, especially when Wang Daoyuan had the capital to be arrogant. Even a Peak Foundation establishment cultivator didn't have the confidence to defeat him. He snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. The person who exchanged for the mysterious ice jade essence was refining the inky jade lotus seed, so the exchange didn't continue. After an hour, the inky jade serene lotus seed was completely refined. He cupped his hands to Wang Daoyuan and said, "Thank you, Dao Yu. My soul injury has been healed." Finished speaking, he took out a second-tier low-grade long sword and broke it with force. He handed the sword hilt to Wang Daoyuan and said, "I got the inky jade lotus seed. If it wasn't for Daoyu's reminder, I would have been killed on the street. I'm Lu Yuan, and I owe Dao Yu a favor. In the future, if you have any instructions, just send someone to find me with the sword hilt. Even if I have to go through water and tread on fire, I will never refuse." Finished speaking, he put the sword into his storage bag and turned to walk out. The exchange continued. Another 9th-level Foundation Establishment cultivator walked onto the stage and took out a second-tier high-grade magic weapon long sword. This thing was quite popular, but Wang Daoyuan wasn't interested. The things that the next few cultivators took out were also things that Wang Daoyuan didn't need, so he didn't make a move. After 4 hours, except for Wang Daoyuan and a few Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators, everyone else had gone on stage. Jiyu said to Wang Daoyuan, "Wu Daoyu, aren't you going on stage to exchange for something?" Wang Daoyuan shook his head and said, "The things in my hands are all relatively ordinary goods. I'll wait for Daoyu to finish exchanging, then I'll go on stage." Jiyu didn't persuade anymore. He ran onto the stage and took out a beast skin book page, saying, "This is the refining method of a magic weapon that I obtained. It should be part of a refining inheritance. My brother and I don't know the way of refining, so it's useless to keep this thing, so we want to exchange it. This magic weapon, Spirit Gathering Pearl, has no combat function. It can only be used to collect scattered spiritual energy and store spiritual energy. Think about it, if you inject your spiritual energy into it in advance. During a fight, when your spiritual energy is exhausted, you can directly extract the spiritual energy in the Spirit Gathering Pearl. This spiritual energy is originally your own, so you don't need to refine it. It can completely restore your spiritual energy in an instant, and the effect is better than spirit wine. As for the exchange, second-tier high-grade magic weapons and spirit talismans are fine. Wang Daoyuan was very interested in this thing. He didn't care about storing spiritual energy to quickly restore it. He had to inject spiritual energy into the Spirit Gathering Pearl in advance, and this spiritual energy was also cultivated by himself. Doing so would be a waste of time. With the spirit wine, he didn't really need the Spirit Gathering Pearl to restore spiritual energy in a fight. What Wang Daoyuan really valued was its ability to absorb scattered spiritual energy and turn it into usable spiritual energy. This was equivalent to a reusable spirit stone. Usually, it was placed in a place with rich spiritual energy to absorb spiritual energy. After absorbing it, it could be used to cultivate, to set up formations, or to drive the flying boat. In this way, how many spirit stones could he save for the family? The specific value still depended on the speed at which he absorbed spiritual energy, as well as the amount of spiritual energy stored. Even if these two aspects weren't much, as long as it had this function, it could be used as a foundation to continue improving. This thing had to be obtained. Even if it was exchanged by others, he had to kill them to seize the treasure. He wanted it very much in his heart, but he couldn't show it too obviously. He asked, "May I ask Daoyu Ji, how much spiritual energy can this Spirit Gathering Pearl store? Also, introduce the grade of this Spirit Gathering Pearl, as well as the materials used. Without knowing these, how can we determine the value of this magic weapon?" Jiyu smiled rather awkwardly and said, "The spiritual energy stored in this Spirit Gathering Pearl is roughly twice as much as middle-grade spirit stones. The grade is second-tier high-grade, but the material requirement isn't high. Second-tier high-grade spirit jades will do." Everyone lost interest at once. Second-tier middle-grade spirit stones were enough to activate formations and the like. But using it to restore spiritual energy, the disparity was a bit big. A late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator wouldn't even be able to last half a cup of tea's time in an all-out battle with a middle-grade spirit stone. The hope of using this thing to reverse the battle situation wasn't high. It was just an extra chance to escape. On the contrary, Wang Daoyuan was very satisfied. As long as the spiritual energy stored in this Spirit Gathering Pearl wasn't too inferior to middle-grade spirit stones, it could be used on spirit ships and formations. The amount of spiritual energy stored was twice that of a mid-grade spirit stone, which had already exceeded his original expectations. As for the problem of absorbing spiritual energy, even if the absorption was too slow, he could still refine more spirit-gathering pearls and use them as substitutes. Wang Daoyuan took out a second-tier high-grade magic weapon longsword and asked, "How about this longsword?" He slaughtered 7 late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators at the Mirror Treasure Lake Oasis and seized 7 second-tier high-grade magic longswords. Lu Zong's longsword was left for him to continue using, and the other 6 could all be exchanged. Ji Yu was just about to agree when the Peak Foundation establishment cultivator who wanted the Mystic Ice Chalcedony earlier also took out 2 longswords and said, "I also want to compete." Finished speaking, he even gave Wang Daoyuan a provocative glance. Wang Daoyuan took out 2 longswords again and said, "You can continue to raise the price, but I won't raise the price anymore. If I can't get it from Daoyu, I'll take it from you for free. Let's see if Daoyu's Immortal's Cave's defensive formation can block me, a second-tier high-grade formation master." Chapter 308. The Peak Foundation establishment cultivator did not have the confidence to defeat Wang Daoyuan and was afraid that he would really come to kill him, so he did not increase the price. As for Face, for itinerant cultivators to be able to cultivate to this extent, which one of them did not drag out an ignoble existence? Compared to their little lives, Face was nothing. Wang Daoyuan used 3 high-grade Tier 2 magic artifact longswords to exchange for the refining method of the spirit-gathering bead. Ji Yu walked down from the stage and handed the beast skin book page to Wang Daoyuan and put away the 3 high-grade Tier 2 longswords. Wang Daoyuan stored the beast skin book page into the spirit bead space and handed it to his clone Lu Zong to check. He and the clone were telepathically connected. After Lu Zong finished checking, he also knew the contents. This spirit-gathering beads refining method did not seem to be perfect. It should just be a draft. The creator also just barely managed to refine it. He casually looked at it and discovered many shortcomings. This was good news, but also bad news. The good side was that this magic artifact's room for growth was very large. As long as it was perfected, its function would have a huge improvement. The bad side was that this spirit-gathering bead might also have all sorts of problems after refining it. If it was used on a flying boat and a problem suddenly occurred, the flying boat might fall. Not mentioning the loss of several tens of thousands of spirit stones, the signboard would also be ruined. If used on a defensive array formation, if the enemy was attacking the array formation and a problem suddenly occurred, then the loss was not something that could be measured in spirit stones. However, this spirit-gathering bead also had many areas that made him feel pleasantly surprised. The entire spirit-gathering bead's diameter was actually only 3 inches. Such a small spirit-gathering bead could actually store twice the spiritual energy of middle-grade spirit stones. This showed that the method of storing spiritual energy inside was very brilliant. Artifact patterns that stored spiritual energy were very common. Any random jade box could have quite a few, but the brilliant ones were really not many. The thing that exceeded his expectations the most was the spirit-gathering artifact pattern on the spirit-gathering bead. This was an artifact pattern that Wang Daoyuan did not grasp. Grasping a new kind of artifact pattern could be used on magic artifacts in the future. Just the spirit-gathering artifact pattern's value far surpassed 3 high-grade Tier 2 flying swords. Spirit-gathering artifact pattern and spirit-gathering formation had the same function, but the value could not be mentioned in the same breath. Spirit-gathering formation was a basic array formation. Using spirit-gathering formation to collect spiritual energy was very simple. Spirit-gathering formation patterns were often used when refining formation discs. However, the spirit-gathering rune was very unusual. He had never heard of it before. It should have been created by the creator of this beast-skin spirit-gathering bead. Although the jade pendant that old ancestor Yang gave him back then also had the function of absorbing spiritual energy, it relied on the characteristics of the material itself, not the spirit-gathering pattern. Wang Daoyuan had never seen pill veins before, so he did not know what they looked like. Tool inscriptions, talisman inscriptions, and formation inscriptions were all similar, but they were also very different. All three of them had basic inscriptions. If the same 100 basic inscriptions were used to form tool inscriptions, formation inscriptions, and talisman inscriptions, the difference in power would be huge. A rune formed from 100 basic runes could be used to refine a high-grade Tier 2 spirit talisman. The power it could unleash was comparable to a spell cast by a late Foundation establishment cultivator. The tool pattern formed by the combination of 100 basic tool patterns could only be used to forge a level 1 magic artifact. The power of a single high-grade Tier 2 talisman was enough to shatter 4 or 5 of these magic tools. 100 basic formation inscriptions were not even qualified to form a formation. Among the same number of basic inscriptions, rune inscriptions could unleash the greatest lethality. However, inscriptions of spirit energy and spirit consciousness were required to draw rune inscriptions. This caused rune inscriptions to be extremely unstable. Even if they were not triggered, they could not be preserved for long periods of time. If no special means were used to seal them, they would be scrapped after a few decades. If a tool inscriptions were used to unleash the power of a high-grade Tier 2 spirit talisman, approximately 10,000 basic inscriptions would be required. However, tool inscriptions could be preserved for a long period of time. A high-grade Tier 2 magic artifact could be preserved for thousands of years if it was not damaged or in a special environment. To unleash the power of a high-grade Tier 2 spirit talisman with formation inscriptions, at least 100,000 or even hundreds of thousands of basic inscriptions would be required. The preservation time of formation inscriptions was related to the frequency of usage. If they were not used, it would not be a problem for them to be preserved for thousands of years. Inscriptions of formation inscriptions were simple and did not have high requirements for materials. Among the three types of inscriptions, talisman inscriptions were the most difficult to inscribe. They had to be completed in one go and were the most powerful, but the hardest to preserve. Inscriptions of tool inscriptions were much easier than inscriptions of talisman inscriptions. They did not have to be completed in one go, and mistakes could be made up for. Their power was lower than talisman inscriptions, but higher than formation inscriptions. However, tool inscriptions had to be inscribed on magic artifacts, which had high requirements for materials. Inscriptions of formation inscriptions were the least difficult and mistakes could be made. They could be modified at any time and did not have to be completed in one go. Setting up an array did not have high requirements for materials. If one failed too many times, the materials could no longer be used and one could simply change to another material. Formation inscriptions were the least powerful and could not be preserved for the longest. It took too long to set up an array and could not be used effectively. Other than the fact that the materials were cheap, it did not seem to have any advantages. However, formation inscriptions had three advantages that talisman inscriptions and tool inscriptions could not compare to. Firstly, formation inscriptions could be set up on a large scale. The formation that Wang Daoyuan set up on Jade Song Mountain covered the entire mountain and stretched for hundreds of miles. If the power of a magic artifact was used to envelop Jade Song Mountain, even a grade 4 magic artifact would find it difficult to do so. The 5 elements dragon lock formation was an upper grade Tier 2 array and it was easily done. Tool inscriptions had to be inscribed on precious tool embryos and could not be made too big. Secondly, the tool inscriptions had to be concentrated. The basic tool inscriptions that formed the tool inscriptions had to be extremely close to each other to unleash a certain function. If they were too far away, the circulation of spirit energy would not be smooth. Formation inscriptions could connect two formation cores that were a few hundred miles apart. It was difficult for tool inscriptions to connect inscriptions that were a few feet apart, let alone a few hundred miles. As for talisman inscriptions, they could not even be more than a foot apart. Secondly, it was inclusive. Using formation inscriptions to set up the framework of an array could be combined with various items to unleash its power. For example, Dermic artifact array formation was to place the Dermic artifact on the framework of an array formation and unleash the power of the Dermic artifact through the array formation. High-grade talismans could also be used multiple times and could be used to hold the line like Dermic artifacts. Cultivators could also make use of the array formation to unleash Dermic arts that were far more powerful than their own. Thirdly, the array formation could be connected to spirit veins and could completely ignore the consumption of spirit energy. Tools, talismans, and arrays each had their own advantages and disadvantages, which was why they could coexist until now. However, none of them could completely suppress the other two. If the spirit-gathering pearl was placed in a place with dense spirit energy, the spirit-gathering inscriptions could be unleashed to the maximum and it would only take 3 days for it to be filled with spirit energy. In order for the array inscriptions to be unleashed, too many basic array inscriptions were required. With such a powerful spirit-gathering ability, if a spirit-gathering array was used to achieve the spirit-gathering ability, the pearl's diameter would be a few feet long and it would not have any value at all. The inscriptions were unstable and it was very difficult to use them on Dermic artifacts. Using the tool inscriptions to achieve the spirit-gathering ability would reduce the spirit-gathering pearl's diameter to 3 inches and it could completely replace middle-grade spirit stones. Moreover, the pearl could be enlarged without affecting its use, increasing the amount of spirit energy stored and increasing the speed of spirit gathering. When he returned, he had to study the spirit-gathering pearl carefully. This item did not have much meaning to an individual, but it was simply a treasure to a faction. Most of the places that required spirit stones could be replaced with spirit-gathering pearls. It was very important to control costs when doing business. With the spirit-gathering pearl, the cost of transportation could be reduced by more than 90%. In this way, the Wang family could save tens of thousands of spirit stones every year. In the future, when the family's transportation business expanded, they could save even more spirit stones. If they could mass-produce spirit-gathering pearls and let the family members use them to cultivate, the family would not need to consume spirit stones at all. Of course, this was just a dream. The difficulty of refining spirit-gathering pearls was very high. Even if the requirements for the materials were low, it was still difficult to mass-produce them. Chapter 309. The other cultivators continued to display their items on the stage. However, there was nothing that Wang Daoyuan urgently needed, so he did not make a move. Soon, everyone except him had displayed their items on the stage. Ji Qing smiled. Wu Daoyu, you're the only one left now. Wang Daoyuan did not say anything. He walked to the front of the stage and took out a pile of items. I have a total of 300 pieces of high-grade Tier 2 defensive spirit talismans and escape techniques. I have 100 essence condensation pills, soul strengthening pills, rejuvenation pills, and detoxification pills. I also have a set of 5 elements array discs and 10 high-grade Tier 2 offensive and defensive Dharma artifacts. I can exchange them for various high-grade Tier 2 materials, special types of Dharma artifacts, Tier 3 elixir, artifact, and talisman array inheritances. I can also accept the refinement method of special Dharma artifacts like the spirit-gathering pearl. It would be even better if you have higher-grade materials. If you don't have these, you can also exchange them with spirit stones according to the market price. Everyone present was stunned. After a long time, Ji Qing asked, "What does Wu Daoyu do for a living? Why do you have so many things with you?" Together, these things are worth more than 200,000 spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan smiled. I make a living by selling these things. I work with some shops in a few big markets to purchase these materials in bulk and sell them at places like Mirror Treasure Lake at a high price. Then, I buy the raw materials and sell them to the shops that work with me, earning the difference. Everyone understood. There were many factions around the big markets and many people who were proficient in the various arts of cultivation. Elixirs, spirit talismans, and the like were not worth much. Places like Mirror Treasure Lake and Green Willow region were mainly itinerant cultivators. They were rich in resources but lacked people who were proficient in the various arts of cultivation. Elixirs and spirit talismans were expensive, but the raw materials were cheap. There were many cultivators who ran back and forth to earn the difference. It was rare to see a hawker like Wang Daoyuan who was so generous. However, there was nothing unreasonable about it. After all, the more goods one brought, the higher the profit. Especially at such an exchange, there were no middlemen to earn the difference by exchanging the finished goods for materials. Of course, the higher the profit, the higher the probability of being intercepted. As the saying goes, the skilled are bold. Since he dared to carry something worth hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, there was no need to talk about his strength. Although the things in Wang Daoyuan's hands were ordinary, as long as one was a foundation-building cultivator, they would inevitably use them. All of the cultivators there came forward to exchange for resources. Wang Daoyuan also received a considerable number of items. However, most of them were ordinary high-grade Grade 2 artifact forging materials. There was also a piece of low-grade Grade 3 cinnabar ore. Other than that, there were only spirit stones. I wonder if Daoyu still has the inky jade lotus seed? If there is, I'm willing to use Tier 3 refining materials to exchange with Daoyu, asked Ji Cheng. Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, in my early years, my soul was also damaged and I searched everywhere for a way to treat it. In the end, he found a few while exploring an ancient cultivator's cave. After healing his soul, he was left with 3. I've already traded it to Daoyu with Lu Yuan just now. Now, it's really gone. Although he could usually eat the inky jade lotus seed as snacks and used to eat dozens of seeds a day, he could not expose too much of it. That peak foundation building cultivator asked maliciously, Daoyu has such good stuff, but you didn't plant a few? Wang Daoyuan sneered and said, planting the inky jade lotus requires a lot of yin qi. Could it be that you have a lot of yin qi in your hands? As far as I know, the only places that produce natural yin qi are the Mystic Yin Spring in the north of the mountain and the Darkwater River in the south of the mountain. The yin qi in the Mystic Yin Spring has a baleful aura and can't be used to plant the inky jade lotus. The Darkwater River in the south of the mountain is where the Netherworld sect is located. The yin qi has been taken away by the Netherworld sect. I really don't know where there is still a lot of yin qi. Could it be that Daoyu has grasped the unknown source of yin qi? If so, I'm willing to buy yin qi at a high price. The Peak Foundation building cultivator did not speak anymore. He originally wanted others to attack Wang Daoyuan, but he did not expect to be bitten back. If he grasped the source of yin qi, the evil cultivator's cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. For people whose souls were not damaged, the value was much higher than the inky jade lotus seed. He did not dare to continue to pester, lest he be remembered by the evil cultivator. Although Wang Daoyuan did not have a special magic weapon or a magic weapon refining method, it was not a wasted trip. This batch of refining materials added up to more than 300,000 spirit stones. Adding a few tens of thousands of spirit stones, the total value was more than 400,000 spirit stones. Using more than 200,000 spirit stones to exchange for more than 400,000 spirit stones of raw materials. When Xiao Baoguo was reselling materials in the Green Willow State, he sold them at 3 times the price. Wang Daoyuan could be said to be a good price. Even so, he still earned nearly 200,000 spirit stones. These raw materials, if all of them were refined into magic weapons, it was possible to double the value. However, it would take a lot of time. Wang Daoyuan would not do this. It was good to leave it to Zhao Liang, that unlucky guy. Now that he had the profound ice jade essence, although it could not completely suppress the heart demon tribulation of opening the Purple Mansion. Suppressing a heart demon during foundation building was not a piece of cake. After killing Chen Ji, he would return to the family and help Zhao Liang reach foundation building. Before he left Jade Song Mountain, Zhao Liang was already a middle-grade rank 2 refiner. In recent years, he did not know if he had reached high-grade rank 2. With the profound ice jade essence, there was no need to be afraid of heart demons. Foundation building was not difficult for Zhao Liang. After foundation building, his spiritual sense cultivation would also advance by leaps and bounds. Becoming a high-grade rank 2 refiner was definitely not a problem. At that time, these refining materials would be given to him to refine. All the cultivators' exchanges were completed. The exchange meeting ended and everyone dispersed. Wang Daoyuan also walked down the platform and walked towards the door. Ji Yu smiled and said, "Wu Daoyu, please wait. Us two brothers have important matters to discuss with Daoyu." Wang Daoyuan stopped his footsteps and asked doubtfully, "I've not known the two Daoyu for long. I wonder what important matters you have to discuss with me." Daoyu coming to the Treasure Mirror Lake Oasis is also not entirely for the sake of selling resources, right? Ji Yu asked. When he first arrived at the Treasure Mirror Lake, he inquired about the matter of refining corpses that appeared over 10 years ago. In addition, Daoyu's cultivation method also cultivates Yin energy. This Ji boldly guesses that Daoyu's goal is also the thing underground over there. Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, "Your guess is very accurate. I'm interested in the thing below, but it's also not necessary. If it hinders the two of you, I'll leave. Although the two Daoyu's strength isn't weak, I'm absolutely not a match if you guys join hands. But if I want to leave, you guys can't make me stay either." At this time, he was already preparing to cast the divine fire burning heaven art. Condensing the divine bird Bifang phantom and releasing the returning dust flame, this restaurant should not be able to hold on for 100 breaths. Even if there were defensive array formations and array formations, as long as it was an array formation below rank 3, it was just decorations in front of the returning dust flame. Seeing that Wang Daoyuan was abnormally vigilant, looking like he was about to make a move, Ji Cheng hurriedly smiled obsequiously and said, "Daoyu must be joking. The two of us brothers don't have any malicious intentions. Instead, we want to invite Daoyu to join." Daoyu also knows that more than a dozen late-stage foundation establishment cultivators went down, as well as rank 3 magic artifacts that restrained refined corpses, but they all failed to come up. Just the two of US brothers going down is also courting death. Therefore, the two of us brothers want to invite more fellow Daoists to go up. Daoyu's strength far surpasses those in the same rank. Even if it's me, I might not be Daoyu's match in a one-on-one duel. That day, when you instantly killed a 9th-level foundation establishment cultivator, us brothers had the intention of roping him in. It's just that Daoyu's guard was too heavy and was unwilling to accept the invitation to come. That's why it was only until today that we discussed this matter with Daoyu. If we cooperate, it's not impossible. Wang Daoyuan pondered and said, "It's just that there might be rank 3 refined corpses underground. If the two of you don't have the confidence to deal with them, I don't dare to court death." Ji Yu said with a smile, "Daoyu, don't worry. We've long made preparations and also recruited many Daoyu with decent strength. We also have some preparations to deal with rank 3 refined corpses. Although rank 3 refined corpses' strength is far above ours, they can't fly after all, and they're afraid of fire. We plan on using the middle-grade rank 3 Vermilion Bird Divine Fire Array to kill the rank 3 refined corpses." Chapter 310. Wang Daoyuan pondered for a moment and said, "I don't know how many Daoyu invited, but to be able to keep a dozen or so foundation establishment cultivators, it's very likely that there's more than one rank 3 refined corpse. As far as I know, the Vermilion Bird Divine Fire formation has a total of 18 formation eyes, divided into 2 layers, inner and outer. Each layer has 9 formation eyes. Even if it's set up with formation plates, there are still 18 formation plates. The pressure on the inner layer isn't great, so there's no need to arrange for experts to guard it. The outer layer must be guarded by cultivators to prevent the refined corpses from destroying the formation plates. The cultivators guarding the outer layer must be able to exchange a few blows with the rank 3 low-grade refined corpses to stall for time, allowing the cultivators overseeing the core to have time to activate the formation to attack. These cultivators will inevitably be injured, so there's still a need to replace the injured cultivators. In addition, although the formation plate setting up speed is fast, even with the cooperation of many people, it'll still take more than 100 breaths of time. The rank 3 refined corpses won't just watch. Thus, before the formation is set up, they must delay the refined corpses for 100 breaths. In this way, if there aren't any special methods, there'll be at least 20 peak foundation establishment cultivators. If there are fewer people, even with the Vermilion Bird Divine Fire formation, it'll be hard to guarantee complete safety. Wu Daoyu really is an expert. Ji Yu stroked his beard and smiled. Just by hearing the name, you've pretty much explained the tactics we've arranged in advance. We've prepared 20 people, of which 10 are peak foundation establishment, 9 are 9th level foundation establishment, and 1 is 7th level foundation establishment. If Dao Yu can join, that'll be 21 people. 21 peak foundation establishment cultivators in addition to a low-grade rank 3 magic tool that restrains refined corpses. Dao Yu should be relieved, right? Wang Daoyuan nodded. If so, there's still a lot of hope. I can participate, but I'll say the ugly words first, I definitely won't be a scapegoat. Even if it's scouting, we'll have to take turns. If things don't work out, I'll definitely be the first to run. At that time, don't say I'm not loyal. Ji Yu smiled. That's of course. Daoyu's spiritual sense cultivation is high, no one can compare to the previous 20 people. Furthermore, he was proficient in formations. With such strength, how could he let Dao Yu scout the way? If things really can't be done, then we'll naturally sweep the snow in front of our door and escape with our own abilities. How can we care about others? Wang Daoyuan pondered for a moment and said, if that's the case, then I'm willing to join. However, I'm very curious. Who is this 7th level foundation establishment cultivator with peak foundation establishment battle prowess, Dao Yu? Ji Qing replied, it seems like Dao Yu is determined to win. This 7th level foundation establishment Dao Yu is called Zhou Xian. This person's spiritual sense cultivation is also very high, comparable to us 2 brothers, but slightly inferior to Dao Yu. His bearing and bearing are completely unlike that of a rogue cultivator. I've seen many disciples of clans and sects, but I've never seen anyone who can compare to him in bearing. According to my judgment, this person should be a direct disciple of some great power who came out to gain experience. Wang Daoyuan immediately guessed this person's identity. It was the person he had met when renting a shop at Guiyan Market. He did not even change his name. Coupled with his extraordinary bearing and the fact that he had peak foundation establishment battle prowess at the 7th level, it should be him. With this person joining us, our chances of success will be much higher. Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, how can any disciple of a great power not have a powerful protective item when they go out to gain experience? If there's any danger, we'll have to rely on this person's protective item to save our lives. Right, have you decided on the time of the operation? Ji Qing nodded and said, we've set the time of the operation to be a month later. Dao Yu is almost ready. Now that you've just joined us, you need to get used to it. When do you think it's a good time to take action? Wang Daoyuan waved his hand and said, I don't need to prepare anything. I know how to defend the Vermilion Bird Divine Fire Array like the back of my hand. I'm a water element cultivator and am not suitable to guard the core of the array. At most, I can guard the outer array disk. Since I don't need to command the other cultivators, there's nothing for me to get used to. As long as you tell me the specific operation plan that you've formulated, I'll know how to cooperate after taking a look. Ji Cheng handed him a jade slip and said, "This is the plan that we've formulated. If Dao Yu doesn't have any objections, we'll take action a month later." Wang Daoyuan received the jade slip. In order to prevent any tricks from being played, he released all his spirit consciousness and poured it into the jade slip. This way, even if there were tricks in the jade slip, as long as the cultivator playing tricks did not have a spirit consciousness cultivation that was far superior to his, they would not be able to harm him. He did not shy away from showing his distrust, causing the Ji brothers to smile bitterly. Wang Daoyuan scanned through the contents of the jade slip. There were no problems with the plan. 10 Peak Foundation establishment cultivators walked at the front with inferior grade 3 dermic weapons and grade 3 spirit talismans, while the others followed at the back with array discs. After the Peak Foundation establishment cultivators stalled the refined corpses, the cultivators at the back immediately began to set up array discs. Finally, a Fire Element Peak Foundation establishment cultivator guarded the core array disc. The other 9 Peak Foundation establishment cultivators guarded the 9 array discs on the outer layer. The cultivators below Peak Foundation establishment would support the outer layer at any time to stall the refined corpses and buy time for the array to attack. Alternatively, they would replace the injured Peak Foundation establishment cultivators to guard the array discs. There were no problems with the plan, but they lacked understanding of the secret realm and did not know that there were level 4 refined corpses sleeping below. If they caused too much of a commotion and alerted these ancestors, the number of people who went down would be the same number who would die. Fortunately, these refined corpses were not controlled by anyone and could only move by instinct. They also relied on aura to find their targets. Living people all carried aura of life. When the refined corpses were not controlled, they would chase after their targets as long as they smelled the aura of life. Wang Daoyuan's water element spirit energy contained pure yin qi. By using pure yin qi to cover his entire body, he could conceal his aura of life. This secret realm was filled with yin qi and was suitable for him to hide. As long as he did not move around randomly, the refined corpses would not discover him. As for the others, he did not care if they lived or died since they were unrelated to him. Zhou Xian was a little troublesome. If he died in the secret realm, he might be implicated. However, he was a direct disciple of the Archaic Mysteries sect and definitely had something that could save his life. He was also proficient in the aura-gazing technique and was good at seeking luck and avoiding calamity. He should have no problem protecting himself. After reading for a few minutes, Wang Daoyuan returned the jade scroll. Ji Cheng asked, "May I ask if Wu Daoyu has any opinions on this plan so that we can revise it?" Wang Daoyuan shook his head and said, "There are no problems with the plan. This is the best we can do against the refined corpses with the Vermilion Bird Divine Fire formation. The only uncertainty is how many level 3 inferior grade corpses there are below. If there are 3 to 5 of them, we can use this formation to deal with them. If there are a dozen or so, we should run away as soon as possible. Also, I need to remind the 2 Daoyu. Since the refined corpses can stay below for a long time, it means that they like the environment below. An environment that the refined corpses like is either extremely rich in yin qi or extremely rich in evil qi. The power of the Vermilion Bird Divine Fire formation might be weakened by the environment. The 2 Daoyu have to be careful." Ji Cheng said with a smile, "Fellow Daoist Wu is indeed thoughtful. We had considered this problem before, so we prepared some spirit talismans and dharma artifacts to resist yin qi and baneful qi. That's all we can do now. Man proposes, but God disposes. We have already done our best. The rest is up to God's will." Chapter 311. After discussing the departure time, Wang Daoyuan left the restaurant and returned to his cave residence, waiting for the arrival of the departure day. 3 days later, a 7th-level Foundation establishment cultivator came to the door of the cave residence. He shouted, "Wu Daoyu, your old friend Zhou Xian is here to visit." This grandson really came. So what if he's here, but he's still shouting? I can't ignore him. Otherwise, this grandson will reveal everything about me. Helpless, I opened the door of the cave residence and said, "Daoyu, please come in." Zhou Xian walked into the cave abode and did not regard himself as an outsider at all. He took a futon and sat down. Wang Daoyuan closed the door and smiled. "Daoyu really is Daoyu. I heard from Ji Daoyu that there's a 7th-level Foundation establishment cultivator whose strength is comparable to a peak Foundation establishment cultivator. He also has an extraordinary bearing, so I immediately thought of you. The son of a rich family should not sit under the awning. Daoyu's body is priceless, why would you get involved in this?" Zhou Xian replied, "I'm Zhou Xian, surnamed Zhou, not Xian. Daoyu isn't someone who lacks resources, so isn't he here too? No one would complain about having too many treasures. A secret realm that can cultivate refined corpses definitely has a lot of yin qi. It's very likely that it can nurture treasures useful for the soul. Even golden core ancestors would drool over such things, let alone us Foundation establishment cultivators." Wang Daoyuan participated in the secret realm exploration for 2 reasons. One was to lure Chenji out, and the other was to find treasures useful for the soul. Although he had the inky jade lotus, it was only useful for the soul of a Foundation establishment cultivator. At the Zifu realm, the soul would transform into the divine soul, and the inky jade lotus could only be used to improve the divine soul. He nodded and said, "That's true. I also want to find treasures that can improve the divine soul. However, I still have to advise Daoyu that there might be a 4th-level refined corpse. Although you have a lot of life-saving methods, can you survive a 4th-level refined corpse? If something were to happen to you, I would be killed by those old fortune-tellers of your family even if I made it out alive. Daoyu should try not to go down if you can." However, Zhou Xian did not seem to care at all. He said, "If it was before, I wouldn't have dared to go down. But now that Daoyu is here, I dare to go down." Hearing his words, Wang Daoyuan was somewhat curious and asked, "What do you mean? Could it be that Daoyu performed a divination on me and saw that my life would not be in danger?" Zhou Xian replied, "I came early. I was already involved half a year ago. At that time, I secretly looked at the providence of the other cultivators." Dark clouds loomed over their heads, as if a great disaster was about to befall them. However, within the dark clouds, there was a trace of red light that split the dark clouds apart. This meant that there was a chance of survival. I patiently stayed behind to see if there was any chance of survival. After Daoyu came to the Mirror Lake Oasis, I looked at those people's providence and found that there was a great change. Originally, there was only a chance of survival with the dark clouds looming over their heads. Now, their providence was half red and half black. This was a mixture of life and death. Most rogue cultivators would not have a tomorrow, and their providence was like this. To explore such a dangerous place, it was already very good to have a mixture of life and death. Therefore, I speculated that this change was caused by Daoyu. I came here today to see Daoyu's providence. Daoyu won't refuse, right? Wang Daoyuan smiled. Before doing something big, it's not a bad idea to find a fortune teller. At least I have a plan in mind. Hearing this, Zhou Xian's eyes turned purple as he looked at Wang Daoyuan. After 5 breaths, his eyes returned to normal. He smiled and said, "Daoyu's providence is indeed prosperous. Even a golden core cultivator can only have 1 golden cloud formed by providence. Last time at the Guiyan market, I noticed that Dao Yu had a golden cloud above his head, and he had a chance of becoming a golden core cultivator. I didn't expect that Dao Yu's providence would increase again, and the golden cloud above his head would turn slightly purple. This kind of providence could only be possessed by the half-step Yuanying cultivators of the major factions. However, there were 2 streaks of blood in Dao Yu's golden cloud, which meant that Dao Yu had encountered 2 calamities in a short period of time. The streak of blood that was closer to him was lighter, and it should be from this calamity. This streak of blood did not go deep into the golden cloud, and it was intermittent. It was a sign that there was no danger. The other streak of blood was deeper, and it went deep into the golden cloud. Dao Yu's life might be in danger in this calamity. However, it was still some time from now. It was 10 years short and 20 years long. He could not tell what the exact situation was. However, there were peach blossoms in this streak of blood. Even if Dao Yu's calamity was not a peach blossom calamity, it was related to women. Dao Yu, don't provoke women for the next 30 years. This is just a guess based on the current situation. Providence is also constantly changing. There is no dead end in this world. No matter how difficult the situation is, there is always a chance of survival. My attainment in Qi art is not high, so this is all I can tell. Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, with Dao Yu's words, I am much more at ease. I have been a pure yang cultivator for more than 100 years. Why would I provoke women for no reason? I am very confident that I will not encounter any calamities related to women. The 2 chatted for a while, and Zhou Xian left the cave residence. Wang Daoyuan continued to make some preparations. He forged a few protective artifacts, and sometimes went to the market to buy some materials and spiritual herb seeds. Most of the spiritual herbs here were suitable for growing in the desert. In the Wang family's territory, only the central region of the 5 elements mystery realm was suitable for growing them. More than 20 days passed in a flash. Soon, it was time to depart. Everyone gathered on the 3rd floor of the Jinghu restaurant. When Wang Daoyuan arrived, he realized that everyone was familiar. Other than Zhou Xian, everyone else had participated in the exchange. Since Zhou Xian could learn the Qi art, it must be a direct disciple. He did not care for the items that appeared in the small exchange. Even the Peak Foundation establishment cultivator who repeatedly caused trouble for Wang Daoyuan at the exchange was here. This old man was quite obedient now. He knew that Wang Daoyuan was not to be trifled with. Since they were going to explore the underground, he was afraid of being ambushed. Everyone knew the plan, so there was no need to say anything. After the Ji brothers said a few words, they led the group and set off. The 21 people did not fly over with great fanfare. Instead, they split up and gathered at the entrance. Zhou Xian followed Wang Daoyuan like a dogskin plaster. The Qi art could not look at one's own luck. Only by following someone with great luck could one stay alive. He believed that Wang Daoyuan would be safe. Following Wang Daoyuan was the safest. Wang Daoyuan did not care. If this grandson died, he would be implicated. If possible, he still wanted to protect him. Moreover, Zhou Xian was not a burden. He was a strong helper. The direct disciple of a large sect like the Archaic Mysteries sect was definitely much stronger than the direct disciple of the Cruel Sun Palace. Zhou Xian's strength was not below his. Furthermore, he had many trump cards. It was hard to say who would protect who. A distance of 200 miles was just a short distance for a late Foundation establishment cultivator. Even if they had to take a detour, it would not take much effort. After an hour, everyone arrived at the place where they found the refined corpse. More than 10 years had passed. The cave entrance had long been buried by the wind and sand. Since everyone knew the exact location, there was no need to search. An Earth Elemental Level 9 Foundation Establishment cultivator walked forward. He used the earth-splitting technique to clear the sand around the cave entrance, revealing the cave entrance below. As soon as the cave entrance was opened, more than 10 refined corpses appeared. They were the disciples of the underworld sect who died below. These guys were refined into refined corpses. They had only been nurtured for more than 10 years and did not have much combat power. After coming out, they were all killed in less than 10 breaths. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.